Grace Miller placed the glass jar in a prominent spot on the bookshelf, positioning it so she could see it just by looking up. She stood from her desk, ran to the window, and pulled back the curtains, hoping to see if Ethan Ford was asleep yet. But when she looked across, the lights in the opposite window were already out. Oomph. That jerk Ethan went to bed so early. Forget it, I won't wake him up. Grace pouted, pulled the curtains back shut, and flopped on her bed. She grabbed her plush pig, Mr. Piggy, rolled around on the mattress, and cheered, "Ha ha, did Mr. Piggy miss me? I miss you to death," she squeaked in a falsetto voice, mimicking the toy. "The dorm is too small. I can't take you to school with me. Boo-hoo, you poor thing. Haven't seen you in a while. Feels like you've put on weight? Your face is even rounder." As she spoke, Grace pinched Mr. Piggy's cheeks with both hands, pulling at the soft fabric. "Mr. Piggy, Mr. Piggy, you know me best. I'm the owner who loves you the most, right? Do me a favor and help me choose. For winter break, should I go north to see the snow or out west of the Great Plains? I want to go to both so bad. Nod once for the first option, nod twice for the second." Grace cupped the plushie's face, staring at it intently, giggling to herself. She made Mr. Piggy nod once, then immediately nod twice. "Oh my, why are you such a greedy pig? Why do you want to go everywhere? Can't you just pick one?" Grace grinned. In reality, it was she who wanted to go to both places. There were too many places she wanted to see. "Forget it. Asking you is useless." Seeing no independent reaction from the plush toy, Grace suddenly lost interest and kicked it to the foot of the bed. Ethan Ford and Grace Miller rested at home for 3 days. With nothing to do, they stayed in, binged TV shows, went out to eat at local diners when hungry, or bought groceries to cook together. Aside from sleeping, they were practically inseparable. The days were simple but fulfilling, filled with happiness. 3 days later, Ethan and Grace returned to campus. They parted ways at the entrance of the girls' dormitory. "Jerk, remember to call me tonight," Grace said, reluctant to leave. All right, no problem," Ethan laughed. Grace finally broke into a smile, walked gracefully up to him, suddenly stood on her tiptoes, and pecked him on the right cheek. "That's your reward. If you don't call me, just watch how I handle you. I'm heading back now, bye-bye." Grace turned and trotted toward the dorms, happy as a lark. Ethan touched his cheek, chuckling. "That girl she's really cute." Humming a tune, he prepared to head back to his own dorm when his phone suddenly rang. He picked it up and saw it was actually Victor the Reaper Vane calling him. He answered immediately, smiling. "Hey, Beak. Yeah, it's me. You free right now?" Victor's deep voice resonated from the other end. "Sure am. What's the order, Vic? You say the word, I'll do it. Climb a mountain of blades or swim a sea of fire." Ethan joked. "Huh, cut the crap with the mountains and fires. Since you're free, come over for a drink." Victor laughed heartily. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Victor Vane wouldn't call him for a drink without a reason. "Sounds good. Which bar?" Ethan agreed without hesitation. "The Velocity Bar in the downtown strip. Come over now. By the way, bring that brother of yours, Henry Payne. Bring him along for a drink," Victor added. Hearing this, Ethan suddenly understood. Victor likely wanted to see Henry, but couldn't ask him directly, so he went through Ethan. Henry was chasing Valerie Vane, who was Victor's little sister. It seemed Victor might know about the situation between them, but judging by his tone, he didn't seem to have a negative attitude toward it. This reassured Ethan quite a bit. "Sure, no problem. I'll head over with him in a bit," Ethan promised. After a few pleasantries, Ethan hung up and called Henry Payne to give him a heads up and tell him to be mentally prepared. After notifying him, Ethan drove to pick him up. Shortly after, downstairs at the company office, Ethan picked up Henry. Henry opened the car door, sat in the passenger seat, and asked with confusion, "Ethan, why did Vic suddenly call me out for drinks?" Ethan smiled helplessly. "You're asking me? How should I know? He probably knows about you chasing Valerie." Henry nodded and briefly explained how he had run into Victor at Valerie's apartment last time. "I think Vic is pretty open-minded. He didn't seem to want to give me a hard time," Henry said calmly. Ethan thought for a moment and said, "Probably because of Valerie. Anyway, when we get there later, watch your words. I don't oppose you chasing Valerie. In fact, I support it, but her brother is Victor Vane. He's not an average guy. Victor is one of the bona fide bosses of Chicago. You need to be mentally prepared." Henry nodded solemnly. "Ethan, I understand. I'll be careful." Ethan turned to look at him and reassured, "Don't be too nervous, and don't feel too burdened. Vic is relatively easy to deal with, and he's a man who respects the code." Henry smiled. "I can tell." Seeing his composed expression, Ethan felt that Henry had changed a little. He seemed to have made peace with the situation. The old Henry Payne was introverted, withdrawn, serious, overly sensitive, and only knew how to work hard. Back when they were renovating the Westford Electronics store, Ethan found that Henry had nailed a board wrong and corrected him sternly once. Who knew that the next day, Henry would keep his head down and apologize incessantly as if he had committed a capital crime, leaving Ethan not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Later, Ethan comforted him, telling him not to be like that, just correct mistakes when they happen. Henry then spent 2 days working through the night to nail the boards perfectly. But the current Henry seemed to no longer be that insecure, sensitive boy. He had a calmness, confidence, and a fearless energy about him. Had he figured something out? Ethan didn't know, but the change in him was visible to the naked eye. This was something that made Ethan feel gratified. The two drove to the Velocity Bar. This bar was located in the downtown district, but a bit on the outskirts. There weren't many cars on the road, and it wasn't a residential area, just a small commercial strip. The bar was located at the end of the strip, which was actually the liveliest spot, with people coming and going at the entrance. A black Audi A6 stopped at the bar entrance, immediately attracting the attention of passers-by, their eyes fixed on the car. Because there weren't many cars parked at the bar entrance, only a dozen or so old Honda Accords and Ford Tauruses, and mostly motorcycles. A luxury car suddenly appearing inevitably caused a stir. Ethan got out of the car and looked up at the bar. It was a converted 5-story building. The roar of subwoofers came from the first floor. One listen and you knew it was definitely a club with a dance floor. This kind of club, playing loud, generic DJ mixes, was a very popular spot in the urban-suburban fringe, a place where many young people went for entertainment and to pick up girls. Ethan and Henry walked toward the entrance together. Several people were guarding the door. One of them, a man in a black suit, immediately came forward upon seeing Ethan. "Mr. Ford is here. Vic is waiting inside. Please." Inside, on the left side of the first-floor main hall, a dozen people were drinking in a large booth. Victor Vane sat in the center seat with his legs crossed, cracking peanuts. He wasn't drinking, and the subordinates next to him didn't dare come up to toast him. "Vic, everything is arranged." Camel walked over quickly and reported. "I'm good. Sit down." Victor patted the seat next to him. Camel sat down immediately. "Any other instructions, Vic?" Victor chuckled softly and asked instead, "Camel, what do you think of that young man who sat in my car last time? Henry Payne?" Camel was stunned, scratched his head, and said embarrassedly, "Vic, I'm no good at judging people. My word doesn't count." "TCH, Camel, you can really act. I asked you to speak, so speak. What are you afraid of?" Victor glanced at him. Camel smiled and said, "I think he's all right. At least when we made eye contact, he was sincere, and he didn't seem afraid of us at all. He got guts." Victor spat out a peanut shell and laughed. Someone who gets slashed 18 times without making a sound naturally has guts. "I'll watch the surveillance tape. He's a tough guy. However, with some things, you can't just look at the surface." Camel immediately asked, "So, is that why you called him over for this drink, Vic? Want to test him?" Victor nodded and sighed. "I, Victor Vane, have only this one sister. I don't want her following me down this road, and I don't want her dating a man from the underworld. This road is not easy to walk. That kid Henry isn't from streets. He's a businessman following Ethan Ford. After a few contacts, he feels decent. He's a suitable candidate. But wanting to become my brother-in-law won't be that easy." Camel laughed dumbly. Everyone who followed Victor knew very well that he was a sister-complex maniac. In the past, he would take Valerie to inspect venues, and she had seen plenty of street types, picking up some of that temperament. Once, Valerie drank too much, and some reckless kid tried to get handsy with her. Valerie kicked him to the ground. The kid brought people back for revenge. When Victor heard about it from another private room, he exploded on the spot. Without a second word, he grabbed a machete and charged out. Later, Victor chased that group of kids down 3 streets alone, hacking away, and finally crippled the kid's hand. When Valerie was in college, she had conflicts with other students and was blocked inside the school. Hearing this, Victor immediately rushed into the school with 2 vans full of men, scaring those people so bad they wet themselves, and finally gave them a harsh beating. As a result, no one in school dared to provoke Valerie later. Rumors spread that she was the mistress kept by some big boss, and other students kept their distance, which led to her not making many friends. It could be said that if Victor knew his sister was in trouble or danger, he would arrive immediately regardless of the cost to make the other party pay. He had promised his parents to take good care of his sister, so he used his own hands to hold up a solid umbrella of protection for her, ensuring she wouldn't suffer the slightest harm. The same applied to her personal relationships. Many people had pursued Valerie before, But Victor rejected them all because they were all street thugs. He had come up from the streets himself, so he naturally knew what kind of people they were, mostly profit seekers, not decent folks, and generally uneducated. Most importantly, walking this path, who knew when they might end up dead on the street. Therefore, he was resolutely against anyone from the underworld pursuing Valerie. At this moment, a subordinate walked over quickly and said to Victor, "Vic, mister. Ford is here." Victor responded, put down the peanuts in his hand, pulled out a tissue to wipe his hands, stood up, and sure enough, saw Ethan and Henry approaching together. Ethan walked over quickly, extended his hand, and laughed. "Ha ha, good evening, Vic. Didn't keep you waiting long, did we?" Victor shook hands with Ethan, then patted his shoulder, laughing. "Oh no. Seat. Beak." Henry stepped forward and shook Victor's hand. "Henry's here. You could have to drink a few more cups with me later. Before, you hadn't recovered, so I didn't let you drink too much. You fully healed now?" Victor asked with concern. "All good. Tonight, we don't go home until we're drunk." Henry grinned. "Huh, good." Victor waved his hand and laughed loudly. Ethan narrowed his eyes, observing Victor's actions, secretly trying to figure out Victor's intentions. After thinking and analyzing on the way here, he felt that Victor wouldn't just call the two of them over for a drink. Looks like he'd have to improvise. The three took their seats one by one. Camel took the initiative to hand out cigarettes, passing one to Ethan. "Hi, here, mister. Ford, have a lucky smoke." "Thanks, Camel. Definitely lucky." Ethan accepted the cigarette politely with both hands and lit it himself. Victor's gaze suddenly fell on Ethan, and he asked with a smile, "Ethan, I heard your cyber cafe has started installing machines? That's fast progress. Business is sure to be booming later." TSK, 3 super large cyber cafes. No one in Chicago has made such a big move like you. Ethan looked a bit surprised. He didn't expect Victor to know so much about the cyber cafe's progress. He estimated the promotional buzz for the opening was significant enough that even Victor knew. "Hey, just trying to make a living. Investing so much, whether I can earn back the capital depends on the operation of these 3 cafes later," Ethan said modestly. Victor lit a cigarette and affirmed, "You'll earn definitely more than Damian Cross. Those broken internet shacks of his make plenty, let alone yours. But be careful. When you make money, some people will get jealous." Ethan blew a smoke ring and nodded. "Vic is right. I'll be careful. I already have people watching Damian." Having said that, Ethan poured him a full glass of beer and raised his glass. "Come, I propose a toast to Vic. Thanks for looking out for me." "Huh, easy to say come, bottoms up." Victor clinked glasses. Henry, sitting next to Ethan, wanted to follow suit and clink glasses, but was held down by Ethan's other hand, signaling him not to move rashly. Toasting had rules. Only subordinates toasted superiors, and it had to be one-on-one. You couldn't have multiple people toasting one person. Only the superior had the qualification to toast multiple people at once. These were the rules of the table. Henry didn't have many opportunities to be out and about with Ethan, so he didn't understand these rules. Henry was stunned, but he put down the glass in his hand. Ethan watched Victor tilt his head back and finish the glass, then turned to look at Henry, signaling it was his turn. Henry stood up to refill Victor's glass, then raised his own. "I also propose a toast to Vic, thanking you for your care all along." Victor smiled with gratification, nodded, and said, "We're all family here. Come, drink." With that, the two clinked glasses. Henry, following Ethan's previous instruction, kept the rim of his glass slightly lower than Victor's, and then both drank it all in one go. Victor looked at Henry with interest. This kid didn't know so many rules before, but today he suddenly understood. It seemed Ethan taught him quickly, and he learned fast too. Then, he turned to look at Camel and gave him a look. Camel nodded, understood the meaning, stood up, and laughed. "Ha ha. Since Mr. Ford is rarely at this venue today, let's have some fun. Manager Gigi, bring those girls up. Let the brothers have some fun." The girls Camel referred to were naturally the club's hostesses. Basically, any venue with a dance floor had hostesses, but the venues were divided into clean and full service. Clean venues meant just that. The hostesses were there strictly for drinking company. They didn't take other business, and certainly couldn't do anything explicitly shady on the premises. Of course, if you had the skills to charm a hostess into going out on a private date, the bar management wouldn't interfere much. Relative to clean venues, there were the full-service or meat venues. Besides drinking, the hostesses would take on other tasks like dancing, the naked kind, or passing drinks mouth to mouth, and many other tricks. If customers wanted to enjoy these services, they had to pay extra. When the customers were happy, They could take the hostesses to private rooms or the hotel upstairs to rest. In terms of earning power, 3 clean venues couldn't match the profit of 1 full-service venue. Of course, high profits came with corresponding risks. If the backing wasn't solid, those shady spots could be raided at any time. Hearing camel order hostesses, Ethan remained unmoved, just watching Victor's expression. Victor was a good husband at home and loved his wife dearly. Ordering girls at this time seemed inappropriate, didn't it? But Victor didn't object. Instead, he suddenly took out his phone to check it, frowned, and stood up. Hey, Ethan, Henry, I have something to attend to. You guys enjoy yourselves. I'll go handle it. Camel, come with me for a second. Camel grinned. You got it, Vic. After the two left, only Victor's group of subordinates remained. At this moment, Manager Gigi brought over a group of sexily dressed, flamboyantly made-up young women. The woman leading them was a charming, somewhat voluptuous older woman, her figure ripe like a peach that would drip juice if pinched. The voluptuous woman walked gracefully up to Ethan and smiled seductively. Oh my, you must be Mr. Ford. Camel just told me. Order me to take good care of you. I absolutely cannot neglect you. All right, forgot to introduce myself. I'm Gigi. Everyone calls me Mama Gigi. You can call me whatever you like. After introducing herself, Gigi sat down right next to Ethan, staring straight at him like he was a prize ticket, smiling. Mr. Ford is truly young and handsome. Look at the sisters here. Which one catches your eye? This meant letting Ethan pick a girl first. This made the dozen or so subordinates nearby incredibly envious. They all stared up and down at the beauties, whispering amongst themselves, but they knew Ethan had a special relationship with Victor. No one dared to pick first. They had to let Ethan choose before it was their turn. Ethan hooked up a smile. All right, let me take a good look. Hearing this, Henry was stunned, his expression one of astonishment. He thought, how could Ethan order a hostess? Isn't he afraid Grace will tear him apart? Ethan, maybe we shouldn't. Henry wanted to remind Ethan to reject all these hostesses. His heart was only for Valerie. He had no interest in these drinking companions. Ethan stood up, gave him a meaningful look, and said, no need. If we should pick, we pick. This is Camel's kindness. Henry was even more surprised, failing to grasp the meaning in Ethan's words. Meanwhile, on the second-floor balcony nearby, Victor and Camel stood in the shadows watching closely. They were wearing earpieces and could hear everyone speaking in the booth. Vic, Mr. Ford seems to be picking a girl. Heroes really can't pass the beauty test. Camel laughed weirdly. Victor narrowed his eyes, staring at Ethan's every move, and said calmly, him? He won't pick one. Camel was stunned, not knowing why Victor was so certain. Vic, what about Henry? If Henry picks one and plays around, this test was actually for Henry. Not only to see how he dealt with the troublesome Mama San, but also if he could handle the situation well, settle it, and ultimately not mess around with the hostess. Whether the whole process was handled well or not would be seen by Victor. Victor said coldly, then he will disappear from Valerie's sight forever. If a man had no self-control in the face of fine wine and beautiful women, what right did he have to pursue Valerie? Inside the booth, Ethan looked around at the dozen or so beauties, randomly pointed at one who was slightly prettier, and smiled. You then? Hello, Mr. Ford. The selected hostess was very happy and went to hold Ethan's arm, but he dodged. Hey, wait. As the saying goes, share the blessings. Everyone here is Vic's brother, which means they are my brothers. So this girl goes to this brother. Ethan turned and pointed to one of the subordinates in the crowd, picking randomly. The whole crowd went into an uproar. Gigi and the selected hostess both looked shocked. Huh, Mr. Ford? Me? The selected subordinate was ecstatic, feeling he had received a great favor. Oh, thank you, Mr. Ford. Thank you. The subordinate thanked him repeatedly in surprise. Ethan said generously, Hey, no need to be polite. We're all family. This girl is yours. The selected hostess's face fell instantly. She thought she had snagged a big spender and could earn a lot of tips tonight, but unexpectedly, she was assigned to someone else. But the customer is God. She couldn't have any complaints, just pouted, forced a smile, and went over to accompany the subordinate. The subordinate received the girl, pulled her into his arms immediately, and grinned lecherously. The other subordinates hooted with envy. After picking one, Ethan turned back and waved to Henry. Henry, you pick one too. Henry had watched Ethan's moves and understood some of his intentions. He stood up and said, Okay, Ethan. Copying Ethan, he assigned a hostess to each of Victor's subordinates, making everyone else extremely happy. Only Gigi felt it was a bit tricky. Now that they were distributed, only one girl was left, and she was the worst one. How could these two young men like her? Wouldn't Camel's instructions fall through? She quickly stood up and shouted, all right, if Mr. Ford and Mr. Payne don't like the other sisters, then I'll accompany you. Ethan waved his hand and laughed. That works too, but Gigi, can you bring us a few bottles of red wine first? Western liquor and beer are drinkable, but I still prefer red wine. On the surface, this meant the table lacked red wine, but the actual meaning was that while these women were okay, they weren't to his taste. Gigi was a veteran of the drinking scene. She naturally heard the implication, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. This young man had such high standards? Or was he deliberately making things difficult for me? However, she still took it literally and responded, Yes, I'll go get you a few bottles of red wine right now. Please sit. Gigi hurried away. Ethan and Henry sat back down. Ethan took out a cigarette and handed one to Henry. By this time, Henry felt something was off and whispered, Ethan, why do I feel like tonight is weird? Click. Ethan lit the cigarette and whispered, because someone is watching us. Hearing this, Henry was shocked inside, a look of astonishment on his face. Who? Ethan blew a smoke ring and shook his head. Who do you think? Henry froze, then immediately understood what Ethan meant. All of this might be a setup by Victor. Thinking of this, Henry's expression turned a few degrees colder. He smoked his cigarette and stopped speaking. Ethan patted his shoulder comfortingly. It's useless to be angry. He's Victor Vane. This is probably his test for you. That means he doesn't trust me. Henry stated the key point bluntly. Ethan flicked the ash from his cigarette and said seriously, Who trusts people that easily? I'm not speaking for Vic, but it would be the same for anyone, especially since you're chasing his sister. Henry rubbed the center of his brows in distress. It is a bit troublesome, but I won't give up. Ethan looked at him with appreciation. Good, that's the spirit. Just treat tonight as a social studies lesson. Do you know why I ordered girls for the others first? Henry whispered back. Naturally, because you couldn't order one for yourself. Ethan shook his head and held up 2 fingers. You only got half of it right. There's another reason. These people are Vic's men. Even if you don't order, if you don't speak up and let the others order, those subordinates can only watch with envy. That is a lack of the code. Henry frowned. So much trouble? What if I just rejected them all directly? Ethan laughed. Then you have no EQ, and you defend Camel. A look of realization dawned on Henry's face. So there were so many twists and turns involved. Ethan, thanks for being here. If it were me, I would have rejected them without hesitation. I wouldn't have thought of these things. Ethan leaned back on the booth sofa, crossed his legs, and said faintly, So, this is a social studies lesson. Some things aren't that simple. If you're not careful, your weaknesses will be exposed. Why does mixing in society stress? Harmony brings wealth, being smooth and being all things to all people. Because doing so isn't necessarily right, but it's almost never wrong. Henry carefully pondered Ethan's words, especially the last sentence. It doesn't need to be right, but try not to be wrong. Yeah, Ethan, I understand. Henry showed a smile. At this moment, in the shadows of the second floor, Victor saw the two talking, but their voices were low and drowned out by other noises, so he didn't hear clearly at all. Vic, what do you think? Camel turned his head and asked in confusion. After thinking for a moment, Victor smiled helplessly. Ethan, that little fox. By doing this, our test is useless. However, looking at it from another angle, Henry Payne follows a good big brother, and this kid Henry catches on fast. I thought he would reject everything regardless, but under Ethan's guidance, he knew to play along. He has some perception, but this isn't over yet. Camel, have someone call Henry over to see me. Just him alone. Camel nodded. Done. As they were speaking, Gigi returned to the booth with 2 bottles of red wine and sat directly next to Henry. But the latter stood up immediately and waved his hand, signaling her to sit elsewhere. Watching this scene, Victor couldn't help but laugh out loud. That kid is really a straight arrow. Downstairs in the booth, Henry was drinking alone when a subordinate walked over and whispered a few words in his ear. Henry asked in surprise, HM? Vic wants to see me now. Yes, Mr. Payne, the subordinate replied. Henry stood up immediately and said to Ethan, Ethan, Vic is looking for me. I'm going up for a bit. Okay, go ahead. Ethan smiled. He wasn't worried about anything happening to Henry on this trip. Victor should have seen what he wanted to see. Henry left with the subordinate and headed to the second floor. In a private room on the second floor, Henry met Victor and Camel. Just the 2 of them were in the room. Henry's here. Come, seat. Victor greeted him amiably. Henry nodded and sat in the seat opposite him. What's the matter, Vic? Victor lit a cigarette, but didn't offer him one. It's like this. After thinking about it for a while, I feel that you and Valerie aren't very suitable. But out of respect for my relationship with your big brother, Ethan, I didn't say it explicitly. Calling you over specifically today is just to have a chat with you alone. I hope you give up chasing Valerie." As Victor spoke, he turned to look at Camel. Camel pulled a large stack of bills from the backpack behind him and placed them in front of Henry. Henry frowned and asked coldly, "Vic, what does this mean?" Victor smiled kindly. "This is $10,000. Consider it a little compensation for you. I hope starting tomorrow you won't appear in front of Valerie. You're Ethan's brother, so that makes you family. I don't want to make things look ugly. Take the money, and everything will be fine." Henry's face grew colder. "Vic, what if I don't take it?" Victor's originally kind smile instantly turned sinister and chilling. "Then you're not family." The threat in these words was very obvious. But Henry didn't change his expression. He stood up, looked straight into Victor's cold eyes without fear, and even suddenly smiled slightly. "Vic, you are Valerie's brother. I respect you and look up to you. But I won't accept your words, and I won't take your money. I can't stop you from doing anything, but likewise, you can't stop me from doing what I need to do. Money, life, and death. Right now, neither is important to me. I will do what I believe I should do." In his eyes, there was fearlessness and determination. When a person isn't even afraid of death, they are truly fearless. Victor said in a deep voice, "You're that stubborn? Why can't you be like your boss, Ethan, and be a bit flexible? There are plenty of good girls in the world." Henry said calmly, "I am Henry Payne. I am just me. I believe that even Ethan has things he would persist in with his life. Everyone should." For a moment, the entire private room fell into a deathly silence, the air seemingly frozen. After a while, Victor broke the silence and laughed. Young people these days really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. With that, he took a cigarette from the pack and handed it to Henry. "Have one, kid." Henry was stunned, not knowing why Victor's attitude had suddenly shifted so much when he was clearly cold toward him just a moment ago. But he still accepted the cigarette with both hands. "Thanks, Vic." Victor stood up, walked in front of him, and smiled. "You're right. Everyone should have something they persist in. However, this doesn't mean I recognize you as a qualified suitor. I might not stop you, but I hope you mind the rules. Don't try anything funny." Hearing this, Henry breathed a slight sigh of relief. He had barely passed this hurdle. "I understand, Vic. Let's go. Downstairs to drink, ha." Victor laughed heartily, flipping his mood faster than flipping a page in a book. Camel put the money away, went over, hooked his arm around Henry's shoulder, and said with gratification, "Good kid, don't think about leaving tonight. You're playing dice with me later." Camel, I don't know how." Henry spread his hands, looking helpless. "Hey, doesn't matter if you don't know. I'll teach you. How can you come out drinking and not know how to play dice?" Camel said warmly. The group of three walked out of the private room together. Just as they exited, they suddenly saw a group of people in the hallway, about 20 of them. Some of them looked like they were already drunk. "Oh, hey, Vic. Good evening, Vic." A middle-aged man in the front wearing a leather jacket saw Victor and immediately smiled and waved. A strange look appeared on Victor's face because he didn't recognize the man in front of him. "You are." The man in the leather jacket straightened up, and the group of men behind him suddenly stood straight too, showing none of their drunken appearance from a moment ago. Seeing this, a strong sense of unease suddenly surged in Henry's heart. Something was wrong. Vic, me? I'm the one here for your life." The leather jacket man smiled hideously. Suddenly, the man in the leather jacket walked quickly toward Victor, pulling a shining machete from behind his clothes. FCK. Chop Victor Vane to death. Accidents happen in a heartbeat. The leather-jacketed man suddenly drew his blade and swung. It all happened in a split second. Henry hadn't even reacted before a machete came hacking down from above. Bang! The first person to react was Victor. He lifted his leg and kicked the leather-jacketed man flying. "Fall back first," Victor said calmly, but his entire face had darkened. No need to say it. Enemies had come knocking. Living the street life required this kind of awareness. Victor had been in the game for years, battle-hardened. The moment that man reached for his blade, Victor was already on high alert, instantly deciding how to respond. "Vic, look out!" Behind Victor, Henry let out a low roar. Schlick! Victor turned to look. Somehow, several burly men holding knives had popped out of the private room behind them. One had already swung, trying to ambush Victor, but Henry blocked him. However, the machete landed solidly on Henry's arm. Blood sprayed instantly, dyeing half his shirt red in a second. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Henry kicked the ambusher down. "Henry!" Seeing this, Victor flew into a rage, his face like frost. He stomped on the man's head. Crack! The man's neck twisted, and he passed out cold. Victor picked up a machete from the ground. Before he could stand straight again, The others were already upon him. Victor's eyes bulged like copper bells, his fury reaching the heavens. He crouched low to avoid getting slashed while swinging his blade wildly with his right hand. SHNK, SHNK. The sound of steel cutting flesh rang out. The 5 ambushers behind them were hacked to the ground by Victor in the span of 3 breaths. When he turned back, he found that Camel, trying to hold off the 20-plus men attacking from the front, was already covered in blood, sustaining countless cuts. Yet, Camel stood firm, constantly swinging his blade to force back the attackers. "Vic, run!" Camel shouted without looking back. Henry grabbed a chair from the private room and swung it, helping to relieve the pressure on Camel. But how could Victor flee alone? Without a second word, he raised his blade and charged into the slaughter. For a moment, blades flashed and shadows danced. Shouts of killing rose everywhere, descending into chaos. The sounds of hacking on the second floor terrified the other customers in the bar, causing screams and flight. The whole bar turned into a chaotic mess. The subordinates downstairs didn't know what was happening when it started. Everyone was dazed. Only Ethan heard the commotion from the second floor and reacted instantly. Something happened upstairs. But before he could lead the group of subordinates upstairs to save them, a dozen people suddenly burst through the bar's main entrance. Every one of them held a weapon, looking fierce and evil. As soon as they entered, they hacked down the door guards and innocent bartenders. "FCK you all. Brothers, chop Victor Vane to death for me." The leader, a youth with dyed purple hair, raised his blade and shouted. The group behind him responded in unison, looking toward Ethan's direction like madmen. SHD. Ethan's eyes widened. He didn't expect to run into Victor's enemies. Just his damn luck. Earlier, when Ethan learned about Victor's background, he had thought that getting too close to Victor would be dangerous. He just hadn't expected the danger to come so fast and so fiercely. But now wasn't the time to complain. He had to save Vic first. As long as Victor was okay, the situation could be stabilized. If Victor went down, morale would crumble, and this group would lose their fight. The enemy wanted to capture the king first, so he had to protect the man. "Upstairs. Everyone follow me to the second floor to save Vic." In the nick of time, Ethan shouted at the subordinates. This yell woke them up. Ethan was the first to sprint toward the stairs, followed by the other subordinates. They didn't have weapons, so they grabbed vodka bottles and followed Ethan's charge. A few stayed behind to block the purple-haired youth group at the stairs using chairs. The entire bar was filled with screams, the sounds of slashing, shattering glass, and overturning tables. The hostesses and customers had already scattered and fled. Before long, the main hall of the bar was almost empty. Meanwhile, Ethan had rushed to the second floor. Carrying a bottle of vodka, he saw the crowd in the hallway and charged straight in, sneaking up behind a man. Smash! Ethan slammed the bottle down hard on the back of the man's head. The bottle shattered, and the man was knocked out cold on the spot. This startled the group, and they turned to stare at Ethan. FCK. Ethan threw the jagged remains of the bottle, smashing it into another man's face, gashing it open. Using this opening, Ethan bent down and picked up a machete from the ground. At the same time, the 12 or so subordinates behind him arrived, recklessly charging in with bottles in hand. Suddenly, both sides were engaged in a melee. Now in the hallway, the leather-jacketed man's group was sandwiched between Victor and Ethan, attacked from front and back. Seeing the enemy's formation crumbling and panic setting in, Victor hacked with even wider, more sweeping strikes. His machete's edge had curled from the impact. Breaking one blade, he picked up another and continued the slaughter, invincible, looking like a god of death incarnate. He turned and saw Camel covered in blood. He grabbed Camel's collar and pulled him back from the front line. "Camel, you rest," Victor said in a deep voice, stepping forward to shield Camel. He stared at the leather-jacketed man with eyes wide in rage, radiating a murderous aura so powerful it was terrifying. Once Camel disengaged, he collapsed against the wall in exhaustion. His body and face were covered in cuts, flesh torn open, transformed into a bloody figure. Beak. Seeing the tide turn, Camel finally breathed a sigh of relief. Through the blood on his face, a smile of relief appeared at the corner of his mouth before he fell straight down. Victor was tall and built like an iron tower. Standing in front of the leather-jacketed man's group, his presence was intimidating. Cowed by Victor's aura, not a single person from the leather-jacketed man's group dared to take a step forward. Seeing Victor, looks of terror and fear appeared on their faces. Victor raised his machete, pointed it at the leather-jacketed man, and said icily, "Your life, I'm taking it." His sentence was like a death warrant from Hades, shaking the entire room. The next moment, a blade flashed. The leather-jacketed man took a heavy blow to the chest, blood splattering. The man howled miserably, stumbling backward in fright. But Victor wouldn't give him the chance to retreat. A second strike swung out. SHNK. This slash came down from above, heavy and unstoppable. The machete cleaved from the man's shoulder blade all the way to his stomach. Another scream, and the leather-jacketed man was hacked to the ground, unconscious. With the leader down, the remaining men lost their will to fight. They fought desperately to break through Ethan's direction to escape. Ethan looked up and saw Victor was unharmed. He breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want to risk his life keeping these people here. As long as Victor was fine, it was a success. Of the 20-plus men, only 5 managed to flee in panic. The rest were all lying on the ground, blood dyeing the entire second-floor hallway red. "Vic, you okay?" Ethan wiped the blood from his face and walked toward Victor. "I'm fine, but Henry and Camel are hurt. You take them to the hospital first. Leave the cleanup to me." Victor's expression was calm. His face was devoid of emotion. You couldn't tell if it was anger or something else. But Ethan saw killing intent in his eyes. Monstrous killing intent. Ethan had a premonition that this matter wouldn't end here, and since he was already deeply involved, it would be hard to extricate himself. But right now, there was no choice. If Victor went down, everyone around him would be implicated. "Give me a hand. Let's get them out," Ethan said with a grim face to the subordinates behind him. He turned to look at Henry and asked with concern, "How about it, Henry? Can you walk?" Half of Henry's clothes were stained with blood. The injury looked serious. "I'm fine. Get Camel to the hospital first." Henry gritted his teeth, enduring the pain, then helped the others lift the unconscious Camel. There were still enemies in the main hall downstairs. Victor took the lead, holding a machete to clear the path. The group went straight to the first floor. The subordinates who had blocked the stairs earlier had been hacked down, groaning in pain. The purple-haired youth sat in a booth wiping his blade, clearly waiting for Victor. Seeing Victor and Ethan come down, the purple-haired youth grinned hideously. "Oh my, Vic is still alive." As he spoke, he turned to look at Ethan, staring straight at him with eyes that were sinister and venomous. This gave Ethan the feeling of being stared at by a viper. I recognize you. Damien Cross's men fell into your hands last time. What was the name?" "Oh right, Ethan. 4, right?" The purple-haired youth chuckled lightly, his smile full of mockery. Hearing this, Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He clearly didn't know this guy, yet the guy knew his name, and he knew about the feud with Damien Cross. A sense of unease rose from the bottom of Ethan's heart. "Who are you?" Ethan asked in a calm tone, staring back at the purple-haired youth. Remember this, kid? My name is Barry Baz Mitchell. From now on, the downtown territory belongs to us." Baz waved his blade, stood up, and declared arrogantly. Victor frowned slightly. "You're with the Thunder Bay crew?" Baz sneered. "FCK, at least you have some eyes." "Victor Vane, it's been over a year. Our boss says he really missed you, huh?" Ethan turned his head and whispered, "Vic, what road is the Thunder Bay crew on?" "Just a bunch of hillbillies. I had some beef with them back in the day," Victor said calmly, his tone filled with disdain, clearly not putting this group in his eyes. Ethan thought carefully, then his heart suddenly jumped. "Thunder Bay. SHD. How do we provoke these people?" That place produced ruthless men. Anyone who came out of Thunder Bay to hustle was no ordinary person. The folks that were tough, street brawls were common, and rumors said they sometimes used guns in fights. Ethan felt a headache coming on. He hadn't expected to get dragged into this, and the opponent was so tricky. This was going to be hard to handle. Victor took 2 steps forward, stared at Baz, and said, "You think you have the ability to make me wash my hands in a golden basin? You're not there yet. Cool, man. All dozen of you, come at me together." Victor crooked his finger, signaling them to attack. "FCK. Who the FCK are you posturing for?" Baz lifted his blade to charge, but suddenly a subordinate ran over and whispered something in his ear. "HM? What?" "The boss said that." Baz asked with a dark face. The subordinate nodded. "FCK. I got it." Baz cursed, obviously a bit unwilling. Then he looked at Victor, shrugged, and put on a smiling face. "Looks like we can't play tonight. Victor Vane, keep that life of yours for now. We'll meet again sooner or later. By the way, and you, Mr. Ford, be careful when you go out at night. Brothers, let's go." Baz waved his hand, and the group swaggered away, turning to leave. Anger surfaced on Victor's face. He wanted to rush over, but was grabbed by Ethan. "Vic, let's get the brothers to the hospital first. Something happened here. It'll attract attention soon." Ethan dissuaded him. Victor saw that Camel was still unconscious. Now wasn't the time to tangle further. Let's go. Victor responded in a deep voice. Ethan and Victor took all the injured brothers to a private clinic. This clinic was funded by Victor and was relatively safe. By the time they settled all the wounded, it was late at night. Although Henry took a slash, the cut wasn't deep. He got over 20 stitches and was bandaged up. His left hand wouldn't be usable for a while. Camel, however, had barely escaped with his life. His whole body was covered in cuts. He was currently lying in the intensive care unit, unconscious. After handling matters and leaving the rest to the medical staff, Ethan and Victor went to the courtyard on the first floor of the clinic. Victor handed Ethan a cigarette. Ethan, thanks to you tonight. Otherwise, my fate would have been about the same as Camel's. Ethan took the cigarette and shook his head. Vic, you're treating me like an outsider. It's what I should have done. Vic, what exactly is the grudge between you and those guys? Victor sat on the bench in the gazebo, lit his cigarette, took a deep drag, and said calmly, everything under the sun boils down to the word profit. Do you know how many venues I have in Chicago? Ethan shook his head, indicating he didn't know. Big and small venues, KTVs, pool halls, arcades, bars, clubs, dance halls, 52. Victor held out his hand. Hearing this, Ethan was secretly shocked. Victor operated so many properties. The money these places earned every day was probably hard to count. No wonder. Victor became a Chicago boss. With so many venues, he definitely didn't lack manpower. His influence wasn't small. Seeing his astonished look, Victor took a drag and continued. This doesn't include the hotels and motels I run. My venues are mainly concentrated in downtown and the west side. Both areas are fat meat. Plenty of people are eyeing them. While I'm still around, those people might still have some scruples. Except for the Thunder Bay crew. Smoking a cigarette, Victor used a very calm tone to tell Ethan about that past underworld grudge. 2 years ago, Victor and the Thunder Bay crew fought over territory for half a year, with wins and losses on both sides. Later, the leader of the Thunder Bay crew, Ray Young, proposed peace talks. Both sides agreed to meet at a restaurant. At the time, the location was in Victor's territory, so he didn't bring many people, just a dozen close brothers, who knew that old fox Ray Young would pull a dirty trick, setting an ambush in the restaurant to take him out then and there. In the end, it was one of Victor's brothers fighting to the death to protect him that allowed Victor and the others to escape. But that brother left his life there forever. Because a life was lost and Ray Young was witnessed, he was listed as a fugitive by the police. Before Victor could personally take revenge, Ray Young had vanished without a trace. Over a year had passed. He thought the matter was over, but he hadn't expected the Thunder Bay people to come killing their way back. No need to guess. He knew that Ray Young had returned. This time, they were coming straight for his life. Ethan fell silent after listening. Not only was he dragged into this feud, but from Victor's words, this opponent was extremely tricky. What a mess. Suddenly, the rapid ringing of a phone broke the silence between the two. It was Victor's phone. Victor took it out, looked at it, and gave a bitter smile. Damn, that girl Valerie is probably coming over. Half an hour later, inside Henry's hospital room, Ethan and Victor were having a late-night snack when the door suddenly opened. It was Valerie. Victor felt warm inside. He hadn't expected his sister to rush over so quickly in the middle of the night to check on her brother. How thoughtful. Valerie, you're here. I told you I was fine. No need to rush over specifically this late. But seeing you here makes me happy, Victor said, deeply moved, standing up and opening his arms, waiting for Valerie to throw herself at him. But the next moment, Valerie said, "Oh," walked straight past him and headed directly for Henry on the hospital bed. Victor. He turned his head blankly and saw Valerie sitting by Henry's bedside, asking about the latter's injuries with concern. Crack. He felt his heart shatter. What the hell? Never seen my sister care so much about another man. Does she have feelings for Henry? Victor smiled bitterly and shook his head secretly. Beside the bed, Valerie was examining the injury on Henry's left arm. Your old injuries just healed, and now you have new ones. What? Do you think you don't have enough scars? Try and make a tattoo out of them. Valerie rolled her eyes at him, complaining, though her tone revealed traces of heartache. Facing the concern of his crush, Henry scratched his head foolishly. Although his arm hurt, the corners of his mouth were grinning almost to his ears. And no, it's fine. Just a scratch. Are you worried about me? Henry asked, rarely this thick-skinned. Valerie's cheeks turned red, and she spat. Who? Who's worried about you? Hee. Keep this up, and you won't even know when someone hacks you to death. You think you're immortal, made of steel. Henry, being scolded, didn't dare refute a word. He just kept grinning foolishly. He suddenly felt that getting slashed was somewhat worth it. Victor coughed twice to interrupt their conversation. Valerie, don't you care about your brother at all? Valerie stood up, walked over, looked Victor up and down, and said, Bro, aren't you fine? Humph. Besides, if it weren't for you, would old Henry and so many brothers get hurt? Bro, when will you stop? When are you willing to wash your hands of this? Toward the end, Valerie questioned him with some agitation. The hospital room instantly fell into a deathly silence. After a long time, Victor replied faintly, Valerie, I have my own plans. Plans? What plans? Are you going to wait until the brothers around you, your family, and friends all get hurt before you stop? Valerie's eyes were red, rimmed with tears. Her gaze looking at Victor held both anger and pleading. The next moment, tears finally couldn't help but slide from her eyes. Victor wanted to reach out and wipe them for her, but his hand raised slightly and then stopped. He moved his lips wanting to explain something, but in the end, he couldn't say anything. Bro, I'm scared. I'm scared that one day the person lying in the hospital bed, lying in the ICU, will be you. Do you know that? Valerie cried out, but seeing Victor remain unmoved, her heart went completely cold. I see you still don't have that realization. Valerie wiped away her tears and walked quickly out of the room without looking back. In the room, silence returned. Everyone's face carried a heaviness. After a long time, Victor gave a bitter laugh, his eyes full of helplessness. Stop. Easier said than done. Some things, once done, there is no turning back. He turned to look at Ethan and mocked himself. Ethan, do you think I'm stupid too? Ethan shook his head and said seriously, Vic, I understand you. As the saying goes, once in the game, you're not your own master. Once involved in grudges, wanting to retreat completely is extremely difficult. Ethan understood Victor's difficulties. If he retreated, how would his businesses and the thousands of families below him survive? With so many brothers under him, how many could be lucky enough to escape the sharp blades? This was the reason Ethan didn't want to get involved too deeply. Being implicated this time was something he had already foreseen as a possibility. Victor looked somewhat helpless. It's good that you understand me, but I'm afraid only you can understand me. Henry suddenly asked in a deep voice, Vic, that group acts so brazenly. What do you plan to do? If it's not resolved, there will likely be a next time. Victor laughed lightly and looked at Ethan instead. Ethan, if it were you, what would you do? Ethan said without hesitation, they threw the first punch, so we throw the last. And we have to wipe them out completely. It must be a fatal blow. Victor looked at him with appreciation and laughed. Great minds think alike. An hour later, Ethan and Victor walked out of the ward together. Within the hour, the two discussed a lot, talking about how to counterattack and formulating a plan. After confirming the plan, Ethan saw it was already past 1 a.m. It was getting late, so he rose to leave. Just in case, Victor found 6 subordinates to drive 2 cars and escort him back. Ethan left the hospital by car, preparing to return to campus. As the convoy passed the main road of downtown, Ethan suddenly saw a woman walking alone by the roadside, drunk, being blocked by 3 thug-like youths. She seemed to be getting harassed. Under the dim streetlights, Ethan found the silhouette somewhat familiar. Big Ed, pull over for a sec, Ethan said to the subordinate driving in front. Big Ed was a capable officer under Victor. Like his nickname, his head was big, but when he fought, he was even more ruthless than Camel, possessing a reckless energy. What's wrong, mister? Ford. Big Ed stopped the car by the road and turned to ask in confusion. Ethan looked out the window and signaled him. I see a friend. She seems to be in a bit of trouble. Big Ed followed his gaze, saw the situation on the sidewalk, immediately understood, and revealed a sinister grin. Got it. I know what to do. Hee hee, beauty, I see you're drunk. Let Big Brother take you to rest. A youth wearing a massive necklace grabbed the woman's hand, his gaze sizing her up extremely lecherously. Let go of me. I'm not drunk. I can still drink. Hey, you can't even walk straight. It's dangerous for you to be alone on the main road. Let me take you to a hotel to rest a bit, come on. The necklace youth forcefully pulled her into his arms, his other hand starting to wander over her body. The 2 young men beside him hooted, thinking of getting a piece of the action too. Let go of me. Lana struggled desperately, but she couldn't break free. Suddenly, she stopped struggling, looked up at the necklace youth, her eyes regaining a bit of clarity, and said in an extremely calm tone, Let go of me. Hey, just let Big Brother hold you. The necklace youth thought she had lost the will to resist and pushed his luck even further, putting a hand on her hip. Bow. Suddenly, Lana raised her knee and delivered a heavy strike right to his crotch. FCK. UBTCH. The necklace youth cried out in pain, clutching his privates with one hand, but still angrily slapped her across the face. This slap knocked her directly to the ground. Lana gritted her teeth and stared daggers at him. FCK. Slut. Dare to kick me? FCK you. I'll beat you to death. The necklace youth was furious and was about to continue hitting her. However, suddenly a hand rested on his shoulder and a cold voice came from behind. Dare to lay another finger on her? Hearing the voice behind him, the necklace youth's anger flared even hotter. FCK. Who the hell dares to meddle in my business? He whipped his head around, intending to see which blind fool was interfering. The moment he turned, he was dumbfounded. Standing behind him was a clean-cut young man, but behind that young man stood a group of terrifying figures. Among them, the burly man with the massive head was particularly conspicuous, his eyes revealing a ferocity akin to a wolf, sending shivers down one's spine. The youth looked at the group with terror, his heart racing, legs trembling. BBB Big Brother, W what can I do for you? FCK your mother. Big Ed raised his hand and delivered a brutal backhand slap. Smack! The slap was incredibly loud, making the youth dizzy. He fell to the ground, 2 teeth flying out. Seeing this scene, the other 2 youths were silent as cicadas in winter, not daring to move a muscle, because they could tell these were genuine gangsters, not just street punks from the market. That ferocious aura, those ruthless eyes, they were on a completely different level. Where did this young man come from? Sitting on the ground, Lana Cole looked somewhat stunned, murmuring, Ethan? Mr. Ford. Ethan walked over and helped her up. Seeing her right cheek was swollen with finger marks, he asked softly, How are you? You okay? Lana was sobered up quite a bit by the slap. She covered her cheek embarrassedly and said gratefully, and nothing. Thank you, Mr. Ford. Ethan smiled slightly. After all, we're old acquaintances. How could I leave you in the lurch? Finished, Ethan turned to Big Ed. My friend just got slapped. Big Ed, pay him back tenfold. Big Ed grinned savagely. You got it, Mr. Ford. Then Big Ed went over, grabbed the necklace youth by the collar, and began to slap him violently with his right hand. He used immense force. Every slap was crisp and loud, beating the youth until he spat blood. Watching this, the other 2 punks were so scared they shivered, flopped to their knees, and began begging for mercy. Big Ed ignored them and focused on finishing the 10 slaps. By the end, the necklace youth's face was swollen like a pig's head, covered in blood, missing who knew how many teeth, and had long since passed out. Seeing this man strike so ruthlessly, Lana couldn't help but shudder. Her gaze toward Ethan changed, holding more awe and fear. After teaching the youth a lesson, Big Ed turned to ask Ethan, Mr. Ford, how should we handle the remaining 2? Ethan waved his hand, signaling him to handle it himself. Leave a few guys to deal with it. You take me to a nearby pharmacy first. Big Ed nodded, acknowledging the order, then left 3 men behind to properly educate the punks while the rest returned to the cars. Ethan took Lana into the car. Finding a pharmacy nearby, he bought her a bottle of medicinal oil. The 2 found a seat at a late-night wonton stall by the road. Ethan treated her to a bowl of soup. Need help? Ethan asked out of kindness as he watched her wipe the wound alone. And no need. I might dirty your hands. Lana quickly declined, her tone carrying more deference. Their relationship had been decent before, but never this polite. Ethan smiled. Secretary Cole, no need to treat me like a stranger, right? Lana smiled awkwardly and nodded. Really, thank you so much just now, Mr. Ford. Just a small effort. By the way, Secretary Cole, you, and Frank Zane, are you guys okay? Ethan took out a pack of cigarettes and handed her one. At the mention of Frank Zane, her expression changed instantly. Her eyes filled with anger and sorrow. She didn't answer, just took the cigarette. Ethan shrugged. She lit the cigarette, took a heavy drag, and laughed self-deprecatingly. Mr. Ford, nothing to be sorry about. Just blame my own stupidity. I liked him for so long, gave so much for him. In the end, it was all for nothing. Truly laughable. He probably never intended to be with me. He might never have liked me. Not even a little bit. Smoke swirled, masking her bitterness and anger, leaving only pain. Ethan smoked a companion cigarette and said calmly, Life is unpredictable, but the only constant is that human hearts always change. Hearing this, Lana's hands trembled slightly. Smoking the cigarette, tears slid from the corners of her eyes. I hate him. Lana covered her face with her hands, sobbing painfully. Ethan sighed softly. Nothing caused more pain than emotional deception. Loving someone was hard enough. Loving so deeply, willing to give everything, body, reputation, only to receive coldness and disgusted looks in return. Any woman would be in such pain. He could only say Lana loved the wrong person, loved someone she shouldn't have, and possessed a romance she shouldn't have had. In the prime of her youth, she met the wrong man. One could say Frank Zane was too clever, or she was too naive. But falling in love makes people naive, doesn't it? Ethan didn't pity her. He even felt she was paying the due price for her mistakes. Just felt it was a bit of a pity. Some pain could have been avoided, yet she chose to rush in headlong. Ethan pulled out a tissue and handed it to her. Secretary Cole, why cry over a man? He's not worth it. Lana looked up. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her face streaked with tears, makeup ruined. Thank you. She took the tissue and wiped her face. After a long time, she put down the tissue, smoking silently, looking desolate and lost. At this moment, the middle-aged boss brought over 2 bowls of wontons. Handsome guy, beauty, your wontons are ready. 2 steaming bowls were placed in front of them. Ethan pushed 1 bowl in front of her and said calmly, Secretary Cole, starting today, you have a chance to re-choose your life. Lana froze, her gaze fixing on Ethan. Ethan chuckled lightly. Everyone should pay the price for their actions, right? No one is an exception. You, me, everyone in the world, including Frank Zane. Lana Cole stared blankly at Ethan, the confusion in her eyes receding, gradually replaced by clarity. After a long silence, she spoke slowly. Mr. Ford, you're right. Everyone needs to pay the price for their actions. With that, she accepted the wontons Ethan pushed toward her, wiped away her tears, and smiled. Thank you, Mr. Ford. Seeing this, Ethan said with gratification, no need to be polite. Consider this our first true collaboration, right? Lana's lips curled into a smile, instantly revealing a myriad of charms. She nodded. Yes, she knew what Ethan's goal was. Irreconcilable contradictions had appeared between Ethan and Frank Zane. In the cruel world of business competition, the winner takes all and the loser falls. To overthrow the opponent, unscrupulous methods were fair game. Now, it could be said that for the same goal, the two had common interests and could cooperate with and use each other. What she wanted was to let Frank Zane experience just how painful it was to lose everything, to lose hope. 2 days later, in the evening, Ethan was busy rushing his homework in the dorm. He had spent the last few days just playing at home with Grace Miller and had fallen behind on a lot of assignments. Fortunately, the teachers had an almost double standard tolerance for him, letting him just make up the work. This could be considered a hidden perk of being the state top scorer. Footsteps sounded outside the door. A moment later, Jason York and the other 2 roommates came back with food. Ethan, food time. I brought yours back. Kevin Keg, O'Connor shouted, holding a lunchbox, specifically claiming credit from Ethan. Thanks, Keg. Ethan looked up and smiled. Keg looked at him with the expression of an old father caring for his child. No thanks needed, it's what I should do. Who asked me to worry about you guys so much? Ethan, believe it or not, I'll squeeze all the fat out of you. Keg immediately turned cowardly, offering the lunchbox with both hands and laughing. Oh, Ethan, that won't do. I still need this meat to survive the winter. Ethan took the lunchbox and suddenly saw Jason York looking depressed. He felt like Jason had been in low spirits for the past 2 days. Jason, what's wrong with you these last 2 days? Why is the white dragon of the waves of our dorm so wilted? Ethan opened the lunchbox and asked casually. Jason slumped his face, sat on the bed, and said gloomily, Me? I got into a fight with Lily. We're in a cold war. Ethan looked at him in surprise. That shouldn't be. You get depressed over arguing with a woman? That's not your style. Jason rolled his eyes. It's because I haven't succeeded yet. Falling out before sealing the deal gives me such a sense of defeat. For a moment, everyone in the dorm was speechless. Holy crap, you're in a bad mood because of that. Keg had black lines over his head. Sam Tucker interjected coolly. As expected, we can't use common sense to understand Jason's thinking. Ethan laughed. Jason, you need a change of mood. I'm going to the drama club later. You coming? TCH, drama club is the most boring thing. I'm not going. Jason said disdainfully. Oh, all right then. I heard the department beauty from accounting also joined the drama club. Ethan said while looking down at his food. Bro. Jason sprang up and ran over to hug Ethan's leg. Ethan smiled and teased. Didn't you say the drama club was boring? Jason said thick-skinnedly. I'm a very boring person by nature. I prefer participating in boring activities. Keg. Jason, the thickness of your face is catching up to Ethan's. Ethan. Damn fatty. All right, roasting two with one sentence. Speak more if you know how. Keg laughed cheaply and shut up immediately. Suddenly, Ethan's computer chimed with an IceQ notification. He clicked on the message. It was from Grace. Little Miss Miller. Smelly Ford, I have it. I have it. Ethan, Sigma, good. Oh, that shouldn't be. Little Miss Miller. / // omega / / pft. What are you thinking? I mean, I have inspiration for my novel. I'll show you once I write it out, hee hee. Ethan, type the whole sentence next time. Scare me to death. When will you show me? Little Miss Miller, proud face, just wait. I'll write a synopsis outline first. Bye-bye. See you at the drama club later. On the other side, Grace was sitting in front of the computer, typing rapidly on the keyboard, a smug smile consistently on her face. Grace, what are you snickering about? Watching adult movies? Chloe Jones asked, leaning over to the computer with a lunchbox. Grace didn't turn her head, continuing to type. What? Can't you see I'm writing a novel? Writing a novel? What's there to laugh about? Chloe asked confusedly. Then she saw the text typed on the screen and froze. Legend of the Heroine. The life of heroine Grace, upholding justice? Oh my God, you're writing a fantasy warrior novel. Grace stopped her hands and rolled her eyes at her. So what? Can't girls write warrior novels? I love reading them. The great hero for the country and people, upholding justice, roaming the world with a sword. How cool is that? Chloe twitched her lips. Okay, as expected of you, Grace. But, in this story setting, you made Ethan into the servant, little Ethan. Does your boyfriend know? Grace said enthusiastically. Isn't that great? Little Ethan follows heroine Grace to roam the realm, punishing evil and helping the weak. His martial arts aren't high, so I can protect him. It's a great setting. Why did you set the meeting place for little Ethan at? The latrine? Ha ha ha. Chloe saw the outline, setting, and couldn't help laughing out loud. Grace said seriously, where we meet isn't important, because in the story setting, heroine Grace and little Ethan are from the same village, friends since childhood. As the old saying goes, when friends come from afar, you must first exhaust their minds, strain their muscles, starve their bodies, disrupt their actions, whip them dozens of times, and then drive them to the latrine. If I don't do this, how can I test his determination to roam the realm? Chloe, is there such an old saying? Why don't I remember it? That doesn't seem right. She was starting to doubt her own literature level. Grace pulled her to sit in the adjacent seat, telling her to listen carefully, and continued, Oh, don't dwell on these details. This is just the beginning of the story. Later, I not only personally teach him martial arts, but also give him the peerless secret scroll to cultivate, making him stronger. Chloe realized, that makes sense. Roaming the realm requires strong power. What secret scroll do you plan to give him? Grace pondered for a moment. I haven't decided yet. How about the forbidden spell of the eunuch? Chloe. Grace, aren't you afraid Ethan will settle the score with you? Besides, what about little Miss Miller's future happiness? Grace's cheeks turned red, and she spat. What, it's just a novel. Besides, it doesn't necessarily require castration. What do you think of my warrior novel? Can it be published later? Chloe said earnestly, I don't know if it can be published, but I know that if Ethan sees it, you might have to go back home to await childbirth sooner than you think. Grace's eyes went wide, her pink cheeks flushing as she exclaimed in embarrassment and annoyance. What? Who needs to await childbirth? I don't want to. It's just a novel. Young master, Ethan won't mind. Chloe teased. Hee, you write him like this. Wait until he writes one too, making you a CEO's personal maid. Let him write. I don't care. Anyway, I'm definitely writing this novel. No one can talk me out of it. Grace held her little head high. Creating a fantasy warrior novel had been her dream for years. Before, high school coursework was heavy, and everything made way for the SATs. Now in college, she had a lot more time. Since she had time, how could she waste it? Wasting time was wasting life. She had thought hard for a long time before finally coming up with a heroine idea, using herself and Ethan as prototypes, roaming the realm with swords together. How beautiful. So she made up her mind to write this story. Posting it anywhere would do, the Zone, the forums, or publishing it. However, she heard Ethan mention a platform called Tomato Novel, where the readers were all handsome guys and beauties with extremely high literary appreciation levels. Posting it there should be good. She shook her head. The outline wasn't even finished yet. Why consider publishing? Too far ahead. Better to keep feet on the ground and take it step by step. First, get the outline done. All right, not chatting with you anymore. I have to take advantage of the inspiration to finish the outline quickly. I still have to go to the drama club later. Grace turned back and continued typing rapidly on the keyboard. Drama club? What's up? Is your club hosting an activity? Chloe asked while shoveling rice. Yeah, the drama club plans to rehearse a few programs to perform in the auditorium after the New Year's gala. We might decide on the programs tonight. Grace said. All right then, I won't go with you. I have things to do, Chloe said. Grace suddenly turned her head, squinting at her. Things to do? What things could you have at this time? Either reading or binge-watching shows. Speak, do you have a date? Chloe's gaze dodged, looking guilty. No, I don't have a date. Grace blinked and teased. Keep pretending. The word guilty is written all over your face. Hee hee. As your bestie, if you're dating, you have to tell me immediately. I want to see who's so blind. Chloe. In the evening, Ethan brought Jason to the drama club, which was converted from a separate warehouse behind the Student Activity Center. Upon entering, there were about 20 people inside. A crude stage was set up at the very back of the warehouse. On the stage were 2 tattered curtains, red and green, and a few broken backdrop paintings. These were all paid for out of pocket by previous club seniors, barely managing to piece together a small stage. In the middle of the warehouse sat various patched-up long benches. In other words, benches that bore the scars of time. Piles of props and junk were stacked around the warehouse. Many hadn't been cleaned and had accumulated a thick layer of dust. The surrounding walls were corrugated iron, spotted with rust. If no one said this was the drama club, you'd definitely think you entered a scrap recycling station. TSK. Ethan, why is the drama club in such a ghostly state? Doing way too poorly, right? Jason looked around, clicking his tongue in wonder. Ethan was used to it and laughed. The drama club has no money and actually costs money. The school doesn't allocate grants, so it relies entirely on members paying out of pocket. Having a stage to perform on is decent enough, but is indeed a bit shabby. Jason nodded. Shabby? It's too damn shabby. As they chatted, a few people rushed in from behind. Hey, Junior Ford is here. Quick, give us a hand, carry the table inside. This is our conference table for today. A young man wearing black-rimmed glasses shouted. He kept a straight face, looking incredibly authoritative. This person was the drama club president, Junior Harrison Stone. Rumor had it he went to a New York acting workshop over the summer for advanced studies, a performance talent. Prez, this is... Ethan turned to look, for people were carrying 2 broken desks back. It looked like they scavenged them from the maintenance department. Hee, I used my connections with the maintenance teacher to ask for these back. The teacher even wanted to invite me to dinner, but I thought about the important club meeting today and didn't go. In my heart, nothing is more important than club matters. Harrison Stone waved his hand, speaking righteously. Ethan gave a thumbs up and praised. Prez is truly our good role model. Harrison Stone was dizzy from the flattery and smiled modestly. Junior is too kind. Quick, help out. He turned to look at Jason. HM? Haven't seen this student before. What? Are you here to join the club? Welcome. Our club welcomes every talent. Although our club's entry threshold is relatively high and other students might not get the chance, I find this student very congenial. His looks and temperament are quite suitable. We'll waive the entry assessment. Just fill out a form. Jason looked at Harrison Stone's incredibly enthusiastic attitude and felt speechless. He quickly explained, Hello, senior. I'm just keeping Ethan company to look around. I don't plan to join the club currently. Hearing this, Harrison Stone's expression cooled a few degrees. Is that so? Then, Junior, you give a hand too. Finished. Harrison Stone walked away with his hands behind his back, leaving a bewildered Jason. Oh, who is this guy? All right, get a hand. Ethan teased. The two helped carry the tables, placing them right in front of stage. Before long, Grace also arrived at the warehouse. Seeing Ethan from afar, she waved and shouted, Smelly Ford. When Ethan turned to look at her, she had already dashed over, standing gracefully in front of him. Smelly Ford. Came even earlier than me. Why didn't you come to the dorm to find me? Grace pouted. Ethan rubbed her head and laughed. You said not to disturb your creation, and now you blame me? I'm curious. What story are you writing? Domineering CEO? Historical palace drama? You're not really writing a fantasy warrior novel, are you? Grace acted mysteriously. For now, it's a secret. I'll tell you when I write the actual text. Hello, sister-in-law. Jason greeted playfully from the side. Why are you here too? Grace asked in confusion. Cough. I just came to look around casually. Just looking. Jason coughed twice guiltily. At this moment, President Harrison Stone clapped his hands at the broken desks and shouted, Everyone gather around. We're starting the meeting. 20-plus people flocked over, surrounding the desks. Harrison Stone, hands behind his back, chest out, walked to the desk and said, "Today we gather at the drama club for an important meeting to decide on the stage play program for after New Year's. This is very important. It concerns whether our drama club can gain the school's attention and expand our influence. I want everyone to brainstorm together and discuss the performance program and cast distribution. Everyone can express their own opinions." As his voice fell, the crowd began to discuss heatedly. Some proposed performing Death of a Salesman. Some proposed a streetcar named Desire. Others suggested the Crucible. It was as noisy as a vegetable market. Grace shook her head, listening to these programs. Although these plays were good and had depth, college students nowadays didn't really love watching them. She quickly raised her hand and said, "Prez, I propose we can split into groups and arrange the performance programs ourselves. It's best if we write them ourselves." "HM? Write them ourselves? What are you thinking? In our drama club, who knows how to write a script? Your proposal is unrealistic." Harrison Stone criticized mercilessly. Grace shouted confidently, "Scripts? I can write them." "You can? Have you ever written a script before?" Harrison Stone asked skeptically. No, but I know how to do it, President. Think about it. The times have changed. Stuff like Death of a Salesman is old hat. Everyone's seen it a million times. I watched it 7 or 8 times growing up, zero freshness left. Why not innovate? We could create our own new play together." Grace Miller said seriously. Harrison Stone kept a straight face, sternly replying, "Grace, you need to understand. This event is about showcasing our drama club's performance skills. Innovation can wait. Nailing the classics is enough. This is a non-negotiable principle." "Oh, like that?" Grace Miller pouted, looking deflated. Ethan Ford hated seeing her down, so he asked Harrison Stone, "President, if this event goes well, how much funding can we snag from the school?" Harrison Stone held up 2 fingers, proudly saying, "At least $2,000 up to 5. This is the chance I fought hard for. How much we get depends on everyone's effort." "Holy crap, that much?" a nearby member exclaimed. That money could cover a regular family's yearly expenses. For the drama club, it was a windfall. With it, they could upgrade gear, refresh costumes and props, easing the club's financial crunch big time. Ethan Ford blinked, expecting maybe tens of thousands, but it was peanuts. He smiled impressed. President, isn't the club seeking sponsors for this event? No other bites." Harrison Stone looked a bit awkward, forcing composure. "Well, sponsorships aren't easy, but I've connected with some interested businesses. But don't pin hopes on sponsors. Focus on our part first. Nail the show, and sponsors will flock later." Ethan Ford caught the vibe. Harrison probably struck out on sponsors. He raised his hand. "President, I can land sponsors." "What? You?" Harrison Stone eyed Ethan Ford doubtfully. "Yeah, I've got a way, but I have a condition. I think Grace's idea rocks. We need innovation, staging our own new play." Ethan Ford said earnestly. Grace Miller turned to him, surprised but warmed inside, knowing he had her back. Harrison Stone scowled, barking, "No way. This is a core principle, the line we don't cross. It's not about a few $100. The room flinched at his volume. "Oh no, President's pissed." But Ethan Ford grinned. "President, I didn't say hundreds. I can pull in $10,000. "What? $10,000? Harrison Stone gaped, incredulous. "For real? You're not joking?" Ethan Ford nodded solemnly. Truer than gold. Grace Miller tugged his sleeve, not wanting him clashing head-on with the president. The president's too principled for money. Harrison Stone instantly beamed. "Well, that condition's flexible. Innovation's great. We should encourage it. But why just one new bit? If we're innovating, go all in. Ethan, if you really snag $10,000, it's no issue." The members? Grace Miller. Everyone stared at Harrison Stone, stunned. What happened to principles? Where's the line? Damn, principles out the window. Guess our president's line is pretty bendy. That's the power of cash? Impressive. But what shocked them more was Ethan Ford's bold claim, $10,000. To them, that was astronomical. Even sponsoring a campus soccer game topped out at a few hundred. No one's heard of that much. Harrison Stone pulled Ethan Ford aside, grinning warmly. Ethan, I knew I pegged you right. From day one signing up, I sensed you'd do big things for the club. Thirsty? Here's some water, fresh, unopened. Come, sit. Don't stand. You'll tire yourself." Ethan Ford chuckled. "Harrison, ease up. I prefer your serious side." Harrison Stone straightened, deadpan. "Ahem, Ethan, if you land that sponsorship, you're officially my right-hand man. I'm serious. He'd hustled 3 years to keep the drama club alive, but funds, talent, and limits had him hamstrung, like cooking without rice. Hearing Ethan Ford could score big bucks? No way he'd pass. He'd call him boss if needed. Second in command was nothing. Ethan Ford laughed. Cool, but I've got more conditions. Can you agree first? What? Harrison Stone asked. First, I run this event fully. Second, naming and promo rights. I call the shots. Ethan Ford eyed him for reaction. Meaning, for this show at least, total control, no interference from Harrison. Harrison Stone paused, then nodded firmly. Deal. As long as you deliver, I'll back you fully. Ethan Ford extended his hand, smirking, honored by your support. That cash was pocket change to Ethan Ford, but not free. He'd leverage it for event control, slap Westford Group's name on it, build campus ties, boost influence at Illinois Tech. Maybe even set up an industry academia base, tapping the state's top talent pool. 10 grand? Just a foot in the door. They hashed it out, then rejoined the meeting. Harrison Stone stood tall. I just chatted with Ethan. He's got real talent. He'll handle the event fully. Everyone follows his lead, got it? Members looked baffled at the flip, but President's word was law. They'd comply. Yes, President. Ethan Ford grinned at the group. With the President's backing, I'll give it my all. Let's team up and crush this show, sound good? Yeah. They cheered, pumped. Ethan Ford dove into event details, setting the tone for innovation with a fresh play. He split folks into 4 groups of 5, rest on logistics. He grouped Grace Miller with him. She jumped in a new play, brainstorming eagerly. Meeting wrapped, Jason York shamelessly hit on the accounting major hottie. Grace Miller and Ethan Ford found a corner to plot the new play. Grace Miller leaned in. Stinker, any ideas? Ethan Ford smiled. I'm giving you the spotlight. Spill. You got thoughts. Grace Miller cupped his cheeks, planting a smooch. Haha, you my mind reader. Stinker, let's do a comedy. Comedy, what kind? Ethan Ford's curiosity piqued. He hadn't pegged Grace Miller for comedy. Grace Miller snapped her fingers, excited. Past stuff's too heavy, too drab. Let's keep it light. I've had this idea forever. Old school Western, gunslinger comedy. Picture a spot with quirky folks, each with wild skills, sparking hilarious chaos. Set it in. A saloon. How's that? Ethan Ford paused. Western? Saloon? Comedy? Title something like Wild West Tales? Grace Miller clapped. Hey, I hadn't named it, but that's gold. Wild West. Tales. Huh. Sold. Ethan Ford twitched his lip. Solid idea. If the sheriff heard, would he draw on me? Okay, set. I'll draft the script tonight, huh? Grace Miller beamed. Just then, Jason York slouched over, plopping beside Ethan Ford. What's up? Got shot down. Ethan Ford teased. Jason York sighed. Nah, the hottie's got a boyfriend. I'm the Playboy Prince, but I don't poach. That's my line. Such a shame. Ethan Ford patted his shoulder. You're like a bird without legs, flying far but never landing. Better pick one tree and hang. Jason York shook his head. No way. Give up the forest for one tree? Impossible. Totally impossible. Ethan Ford took Grace Miller's hand, standing. Hey, your call. I'm off on a date. Gracie, let's go. I'll grab you a rocket pop. Rocket pop lit Grace Miller's eyes. She jumped up. Yes. Ethan Ford and Grace Miller hadn't gone far when some guys hit the drama club, led by glasses-wearing, preppy dude. President Harrison. The glasses guy smiled. Harrison Stone spotted him, beaming, ah, Joe, fancy seeing you. Welcome. Their arrival drew eyes. Heads turned. Jason York perked to the voice. Joe Zimmerman? Damn, what are you doing here? Joe Zimmerman, his high school classmate, family loaded, dad in apparel exports, snagging foreign orders. Back then, labor was cheap. Overseas apparel gigs flooded Illinois and Cali. Old garment bosses raked in millions in years. Jason York's fam did road construction. They collabed once. Joe supplied work uniforms. They met a few times, acquaintances. But Jason York never liked Joe Zimmerman. Too fake, superior in every chat. Plainly, loved showing off. Joe Zimmerman turned, spotting Jason York, mildly surprised. Jason York, you here too? What? Got a target here. Jason York crossed arms, huffing, I go where I want. You don't run me. Joe Zimmerman adjusted glasses, smirking slyly. Teaska Jason, you seem off. Guessing. Girl trouble. Guess your ass. Jason York snapped, busted. Joe Zimmerman scanned him. One more guess. I'd Heather, but she shut you down? Heather was the accounting hottie. Jason York jolted. How'd you know? Joe Zimmerman smiled. Tiny club, 20 folks, 2 stunners. Besides Grace Miller, it's Heather. Hard guess. Jason York's face darkened. So what are you here for? Joe Zimmerman stretched. I'm here. Looking for someone. President Harrison. Harrison Stone, thinking it was him, hustled over. Hi, Joe, what's up? Joe Zimmerman pulled a pen, handing it over. A sleek, fancy fountain pen. President, this pen's for you. Mind filling my club app? I like to join, no issue, right? Joe Zimmerman grinned confidently. You joining? Awesome. Welcome. Zero problems. Harrison Stone took the pen, thrilled. A big shot like this? Future funds galore. Sure, thanks. Joe Zimmerman bowed slightly. Hey, no squit. I'll handle the form. Harrison Stone nearly bounced, rushing to process, fearing regret. Jason York frowned. Joe Zimmerman joining drama? What's your game? You hate this stuff. Joe Zimmerman smiled. Liking and doing conflict? Jason, you're still a slacker. Watch your mouth. Who are you schooling? Jason York's face blackened, anger rising. Fuck you. Talk clean to Joe, punk. One of Joe's goons jabbed a finger at Jason York. Jason York itched to punch, but outnumbered, he stayed smart. No swing. Joe Zimmerman read him, stepping up, hands pocketed. What, wanna hit me? High school, you couldn't touch me. Now, what you got? Jason, wise up. Chasing skirts emptied your brain and body. Jason York glared. Fuck off. None of your biz? Joe Zimmerman stayed cool, suddenly waving elsewhere. Heather, over here. The accounting hottie Heather rushed up, twin braids cute, features delicate, light makeup, real charm. Joe, Heather cooed sweetly, bone melting. Jason York blinked. Heather knew Joe Zimmerman? Seemed tight. Joe Zimmerman wrapped her waist, hugging close. Join the club today. To hang with you, cool? Yeah. Heather chirped, blushing down. Joe Zimmerman, you're Heather's boyfriend? Jason York's face shifted. Joe Zimmerman released her. Nah, she chased me, but I haven't said yes. Right now she's... He leaned to Jason York's ear. Friends with benefits. Jason York froze. The accounting hottie. Willing like that. You joined for Heather? Jason York stared hard. Joe Zimmerman shrugged. Not really. Actually, I'm here for Grace Miller. Huh? What? Jason York yanked his collar in rage. Grace Miller was taken. Campus-wide knowledge. Top Beauty's boyfriend was Ethan Ford. Ethan Ford was his bro. Hearing this, Jason York's fury boiled over. Fuck her. I'm my bro's girl? Begging for a beatdown. Jason York glared, cursing. Joe Zimmerman signaled. His 5 guys swarmed, prying Jason York's hands, pinning him tight. Bam! A buzz-cut guy gut punched him. Fuck you, daring to swing? Jason York raged, ready to fight. But outnumbered, fist no match for 10, he couldn't budge. No matter the struggle. Fuck. Let go. I'll end you. Joe Zimmerman neared. Let him go. I'll take the hit. After, you're expelled. All right, Jason. Your fam's loaded. You'll land elsewhere. But Illinois Tech? Done. Your dad finds out? Belt time. Know his temper. The bat guy released. Jason York, eyes bloodshot, grabbed Joe Zimmerman's collar, fist raised. But froze mid-air. Satisfying? Yeah. But tanking his spot at the state's top school? Not worth it. Not swinging? Jason, retract that. You've grown a bit. Joe Zimmerman sneered, slapping the hand away, fixing his collar. Jason York bottled rage. No outlet. Joe had him pinned. Warning, some folks are off-limits trouble. Jason York said coldly. Grace Miller's boyfriend? Oh yeah, your dorm mate, no wonder. But so what? Just the state top scorer, a test nerd. Joe Zimmerman dusted his shirt, dismissive. He'd scoped Grace Miller and Ethan Ford. Same high school, same neighborhood. Dating made sense. Seeing her forum pics, he decided. Next target, Grace Miller. Betting that angel. Ultimate win. He didn't care who she dated. Just wanted the conquest, the hunt thrill. Heather approached, arm hugging. Teary, Joe, what did you mean? Weren't you joining for me? Joe Zimmerman cold. Sorry. Not for you, Heather. I'm bored. Time to end this. Want rich? Try Jason York here. Loaded. He eyed Jason York. Jason, my cast-off, you mind? Not her first. Fuck. Jason York gritted, lunging, but 2 grabbed him. HM? What are you doing? Rehearsing. A voice behind. Jason York calmed, looking up, grinning. Ethan. Behind. Ethan Ford and Grace Miller, munching rocket pops, watching. Joe Zimmerman turned, hands pocketed, sizing Ethan Ford, then Grace Miller, eyes gleaming. TSK, Illinois Tech's top beauty, stunning. But a flower on dung. This Ethan weighs her. Grace Miller caught his stare, frowning, gripping Ethan Ford's hand. This guy's creepy. His look bugs her. Oh, yeah. Hi. I'm Joe Zimmerman, fashion design freshman. Joe Zimmerman greeted warmly, all friendly. Oh, Ethan Ford bit his rocket pop calmly. Then, you were about to jump my bro? Jason York broke free, whispering to Ethan Ford. Ethan Ford nodded. Oh, got it. Joe, is Zimmerman joining? Might not approve. With some pull now, Ethan Ford could block. But Joe Zimmerman smirked. Might not need your okay. Harrison Stone hustled in, waving the app. Haha, Joe, your app's done. As president, you're officially in. Everyone, applaud our new member, Joe Zimmerman. Huh. Harrison Stone clapped hard, but no one joined. Solo applause, awkward. He sensed a vibe. What's up? Why the stares clap? But ignored, cranking the awkward. Ethan Ford lip twitched, itching to smack him. But in public, not yet VP. Rash move unwise. Joe Zimmerman took the form, waving at Ethan Ford. Heh, Ethan. Clubmates now? Take care of me. Ethan Ford stayed cool, ignoring, chomping his rocket pop. No face given. Joe Zimmerman shrugged, turning to Grace Miller, bowing elegantly. Grace, looking forward to your guidance. Grace Miller frowned. Nothing to guide. Not close. Joe Zimmerman thick-skinned. No worries. We'll get there. All right, gotta run. See you next time, Grace. He pocketed hands, brushing Ethan Ford provocatively. Ethan Ford finished his rocket pop. Did I say you could leave? Joe Zimmerman halted beside him, turning what? Ethan want to treat us to late-night snacks. Ethan Ford waved the stick. Yeah, to crap. Want some? Fuck you. The buzzcut guy cursed. Joe Zimmerman waved him quiet. So what? Happy to play. Joe Zimmerman eyed Ethan Ford, unfazed. Ethan Ford asked Jason York, who slugged you? Jason York eyed the buzzcut. Ethan Ford grinned. Suddenly he stepped up, slapping the buzzcut hard. Smack. Crisp and loud. Buzzcut staggered, lip bleeding. Joe Zimmerman chilled. Beating my dog? Watch the owner. Rage flared. He swung at Ethan Ford. But someone grabbed, slamming him over shoulder. Bam! Heavy thud. Joe Zimmerman dizzy grounded. Grace Miller dusted hands. Thought you were tough. Kitten moves. Everyone gawked. Jason York jaw dropped. Damn, sis is badass. Epic. Ethan Ford turned, stunned, thumbs up. Gracie, you're killer. He obviously fights? I'm in. I said I'd always have your back. No one messes with you. Grace Miller posed proudly. Fuck you. D. Buzzcut charged Ethan Ford. But Grace Miller swept his leg, arm locking him. Ow. Buzzcut knelt, arm pinned. Struggle meant agony. He froze. Still fighting. Grace Miller huffed, twisting. Pain. Let go. Geed. Buzzcut paled, tapping out. Ethan Ford kicked his chest, sending him flying, then high-fived Grace Miller. Yeah, nice one, Gracie. Ethan Ford praised. Piece of cake. Grace Miller beamed. She eyed the four left, beckoning. Well, wanna go? They backed off, scared. Ethan Ford fixed his shirt, smiling at sprawled Joe Zimmerman. Joe, so cocky? Snitched to faculty. I'm game. As state top scorer, Ethan Ford had pull. His rep was armor. No fear of tattling. Joe Zimmerman rose slowly, glaring. Fine. We'll have time. Slow game. Let's bounce. Two helped him. Buzzcut scampered. Stinker, that guy's gross. Watch out. Grace Miller whispered. She wanted smooth college years, safe graduation. Trouble? Bad for explaining to Ethan Ford's folks. Ethan Ford smiled confidently. Relax, handling him's easy. I'll be careful. Jason York approached. Ethan, thanks. That was satisfying, huh? Thank your sis. She's the beast. Ethan Ford laughed. Thanks, sis. Jason York scratched his head. No pro. Fum. You know him. Jason York grimaced. Yeah, Joe Zimmerman's my high school classmate. He spilled Joe Zimmerman's high school dirt. Joe was a brainiac, teacher fave, but classmates knew. Total sleaze, player, show off, with a kink for stealing girlfriends. Once, the school beauty dated another nerd. Joe broke them, scooped her, dumped after 3 months, bragged the tale. Jason York chased a girl, nearly had her. Joe swiped, toyed 2 months, taunted him daily. She transferred in rage. Jason York's disdain turned hate. Ethan Ford got it. So, guy's a home wrecker. Grace Miller tilted. What? Why call him that? Ethan Ford dry laughed. Nah, just saying. Forget him, rehearse. Got a killer idea. Grace Miller, what? You'll see. Ethan Ford teased. Ethan Gracie. Have fun, I'm out. Jason York sighed. Heather as Joe's FWB killed his interest. Ethan Ford watched him go. Odd, him settling? Stinker, rehearse. What's the idea? Grace Miller tugged him on stage. On stage, Ethan Ford revealed. Besides Western comedy, add urban romance. Like Billionaire Falls for Me. I play the mogul, you the lead. Grace Miller stared. Billionaire. Mogul? That's trending. Hey, who cares now it will. We might start the trend. Ethan Ford affirmed. Title set. Love in the West Loop. Grace Miller blanked. What? Love in the West Loop? Unique name. Ethan Ford snapped, in character, grabbing her waist, staring dominantly. You teasing minx, playing hard to get. Huh. Grace Miller stiffened, blushing apple red, heart racing. You what were you doing? Zomega. Ethan Ford tipped her chin. You know minx? He leaned in, kissing. Grace Miller, MMPH. They kissed on stage, spotlight solo on them, center stage. Harrison Stone blanked. Oh, what are they doing? Yeah. Maybe, probably rehearsing. A side part guy stammered. Harrison Stone face-bombed. Obvious PDA. Fine, Kyle. Tell Ethan soon. Lock the play, script to me. Gotta run later. Harrison Stone shook his head, hands behind, out. He'd seen Ethan Ford take on Joe's crew. Mess with that. Better steer clear. Sure, President. Kyle nodded dazed. On stage, kiss ended. Ethan Ford released. Grace Miller's head spun, snapping back, blushing, lightly pounding his chest. You. Stinker. Sneak attack, jerk. She pinched his ear. Ow. Pain. Grace Miller. Warn you, I'm the mogul. Let go. Ethan Ford winced. Mogul? That line? You greasy. Goosebumps. Grace Miller cringed. Ethan Ford defended. That's mogul vibe. You let go, talk nice. Grace Miller saw his pitiful look, giggled. Where's the mogul now? Ethan Ford rubbed. Grace, get in character. Acting needs flow, but your reaction's okay. Raw. Needs practice. Now, one more round. Grace Miller covered his mouth. More cheap shots? No way. Ethan Ford sighed. Fine. Skip scene. Restart. Plot outline first. Oh, call them over. Ethan Ford waved to his 5. Group huddle. Kyle hustled. Hey, leader. No, Ethan. What are we doing? Ethan Ford, basically VP designate. Kyle, sophomore, kept low. Ethan Ford nodded approvingly. 2 plays. Western comedy and urban romance. Hers isn't scripted, but start mine. Pins out note. Trust mine'll blow up. Kyle grabbed notebook. Sure, Ethan, spill, we'll jot. The other 2, guy and girl, prepped. Grace Miller leaned, eager for Ethan Ford's tale. Ethan Ford pondered, fantasy urban romance. Love in the West Loop. Leads Alex Quinn, war hero back from overseas. Master fighter and healer. 3 years ago, 4 families wiped his clan. He swore revenge in 3 years, marry his soulmate. Days here, he returns, weds for love despite in-laws' scorn. Families humiliate, try stealing her. But Dragon Envoy gifts arrive. Outraged at his disrespect, reveals war hero identity. Salt. In-laws regret. Families crushed. He and she live happily. How's that? Huh. Ethan Ford patted himself. Genius stitch-up. But glancing, all 4 blank-faced. That's Love in a West Loop. Grace Miller asked stunned. Yeah, why not? Ethan Ford said. Brilliant. So fresh. Blood pumping. Stinker. You're ace. Grace Miller jumped, hugging like a kid. Clap, clap. Kyle and others applauded wildly. Story's fire. So satisfying. Kyle raved. Yeah, just hearing hooked. Gripping. The girl buzzed. Ethan's genius. Epic idea. Potted guy thumbs up. Kyle scribbled. Total hit. This'll explode. Others noted fast. Ethan Ford lip twitched. Timeless power, fantasy charm. If they knew it'd get overdone later, what did they think? But now fresh to them. Grace Miller. Stinker. War hero titles badass. How'd you think it? Ethan Ford grinned. Easy. I know tons. Supreme warrior, battle emperor, ultimate dragon god. They brainstormed heatedly. Suddenly, someone rushed. Quick, gather. Teacher's safety check. Kyle paused. Nighttime check. Ethan Ford frowned. Fishy. President out his show. Let's see. Ethan Ford waved, pausing talk. Off stage, from storage, 2 middle-aged men, lead in black frames with notebook. Students, halt. Safety inspection. Black frames said sternly. School's random fire checks for clubs. 2 years back, calligraphy club candles sparked piled papers. Nearly torched the building. No casualties, but now strict. Boost safety. Faculty spot checks. Violations deduct points. 0 out. Club dissolves. Evening, mister. Shaw, you, go ahead. A guy greeted smiling. Shaw scowled. Tip off on hazards here. So checking. He scanned, spotting messy props corner. Stuff's chaos. No organization. Fire risk. Deduct 10. T10. Mister. Shaw harsh. Guy startled. Usual 1-2 points. 10 killer. Targeted. Yeah, mister. Shaw, ease up. We'll fix now. Others pleaded. No. Final. Shaw sneered. Where's your president? Sigh. Eyes turned to Ethan Ford. President gone. Future VP's call. Ethan Ford approached. Hey, mister. Shaw, I'm Ethan Ford, VP. Harrison just left. Talk to me. HM? Ethan Ford. Shaw paused. Sounds familiar. School state recruit, top scorer. Joe Zimmerman's call. Skip this. Tricky. Ethan Ford. Priority student, leadership eyes. And VP? Complicated. Shaw switched to warm. Ah, Ethan, state top scorer, haha. How's Illinois Tech? Ethan Ford smiled. Mister. Shaw flattery. What top scorer? Lucky break. Illinois Tech's great fate. Post-exams, undecided. Admissions, mister. Hill pitched. I knew it fit close to home. Shaw's face changed, mister. Hill recruited personally? Admissions director. Connected role. Ethan knows him. Can't offend. Ahaha. Holmes key. Shaw dry laughed. Ethan Ford-eyed notebook. Mister. Shaw. We'll fix hazards. 10 steep. Cut slack. Shaw scratched it. Sure, no issue. Handle it. I'm reasonable. Busse elsewhere. He bolted, no look back. Members exhaled relief. Ethan Ford saved us. Or 10 gone. Ethan badass. Mister. Shaw gave face. Top scorer perk, ha. Kyle pumped. Ethan Ford pondered. This might kick off trouble. Random target? Maybe Joe Zimmerman. Shocking he sways faculty. If him, expect headaches. Grace Miller neared. Stinker, okay? Random check. Worried guessing. Ethan Ford patted. Fine, with me, club's safe. Back to rehearsal. Tons of lines. Grace Miller felt secure, nodding. For days later, evening, Ethan Ford, dorm chatting Wayne Tank, Turner on Ice Cube, handling work. Besides scripting/rehearsing with Grace Miller, prepping West Ford Group's launch, invites out. West Ford Group approved, reorg done, declaring to industry. Hardware and web unicorn rising. Tank, invites confirmed? Ethan Ford asked. Ethan, yep, all checked, partners and peers responding, Saturday attendance. Tank said, good, follow plan, setup, food, drinks, no misses. Checklist all. Media invites, treat well. Ethan Ford instructed. Launch big, nail West Ford's rep. Nameless firm? Sketchy. Fame builds trust. Industry lead. Yes, Ethan, I'll ace it, no shame. Tank said. Grace Miller messaged. Stinker. Choice paralysis. Which outfit Saturday? Omega. Ethan Ford smiled, replying, Gracie, you rock anything. Trick question. Dodge suggestions. Wrong pick. No taste. None uncaring. This. Gold. Grace Miller beamed. Smooth talk fine. Asking Chloe. Girls' dorm. Grace Miller bedside. Eyeing sailor outfit and gown. Chloe, which fits? Chloe mirror unmaking. Formal? Gown. Grace Miller eyed black gown, blushing, but needs black stockings. Saturday morning, sunny, Chicago TV station. News fax team. Natalie Young powdering, will grant packing gear. Sucks, weekend work. Will yawned. Boss's call, what can you do? Buck up. Natalie patted face. Team slam, this kills. My poor weekend. Will griped. Natalie paused. What call, boss quit? Will smirked. Nah, need the paycheck. Right, Natalie. Today's West Ford Group launch gig. Wasn't that finance channels? Natalie eyed. Who watches finance? Boss says for daily news, and our follow-up. Well, shocked. Daily news? For real. West Ford is what? Never heard. Big pull. Natalie handed file. Check. West Ford's info. New group, but from West Ford Electronics. Biggest Chicago PC parts chain. Seen their stores. Well, scam logo. Oh. West Ford. Fix my PC there. Thought coincidence. Same firm. Wait. West Ford's only half-year-old. Natalie mirrored. Bingo, you spotted it. West Ford boomed. Group owns electronics, e-commerce, tech, esports, PC parts, wholesale, online, security, gaming cafes. Full bloom. All tied to PCs, net gear use, spend, security. Missing. NetOps, but feds handle. No entry. Will gaped. Whoa, West Ford's ambitious. Natalie nodded. First seeing such speed, layout. Boss's vision sharp. Futures PCs, internet. TSK, strong for this. Boss Ethan Ford? Name rings bell. We'll flip to founder. Name only. Natalie Pact. Familiar? Eh? Shares with state top scorer, but different folks. Common name. Will agreed. Self-mocking. Yeah. Some born winners, some workers. Natalie stood. Your strength? No tree chopping. Pack. Head out. Launch noon, but early. Will nodded. Gear ready. They left. Morning prep skipped breakfast. Natalie had him hit nearby for eats. Metro Mall spots scarce. Roadside bagels or diners. Natalie wanted noodles. He drove Old Town, parked by joint. Off car, to diner. Curb tables full, locals mostly. 2 beef brisket noodles. We'll call it at counter. Middle-aged woman pulled tags. Beef, 2 ounces. $8. Blank-faced. Sure. Well paid, but no seats. Squat on curb? Fine for him, but Natalie, beauty reporter, squatting? Image killer. Got more tables? Pull one out. No seats. Well asked. Woman glanced. None share. Well sighed. Place tags at window queue. Scan for shares. Suddenly, corner. Familiar face in view. HM. State top scorer Ethan Ford from interview? With 1 girl, 2 spots free. Better share with no one. Thrilled, he yelled. Natalie, over seats. Natalie fretted no spots. Heard rush. Where? Well pointed. There. He's the first out exam top scorer. Natalie recalled. Interviewed him. Buzz as Oyster Bro, but top score slap faces, hers included. 2 spots, she hustled. Hey, Ethan. Ethan slurped noodles. Looked, You. Natalie smiled. Haha. Small world. Seats taken? Mine. Ethan shook. Free sit. Natalie, and will sat. She noted girl. You look familiar. Interviewed you? Last name. Miller. Gressa Miller. Grace set chopsticks polite. Oh yeah, now you two? College. Natalie chatted, reporter mode. Yeah, both Illinois Tech. Me comp sci, Gracie architecture. Ethan smiled. Natalie puzzled. Why not Harvard? Your scores, they beg. Ethan shrugged. Home's close, easy visits. Your dad's Mill Tech? Natalie asked. Yeah, still working. Ethan said. Natalie paused. Heard cities phasing old plants. Paper, leather shut. Mills too. Kind reminder, layoffs loom. Prep. Nationwide shifts. But Ethan smiled. No, unstoppable trend. Natalie shocked. Optimistic despite roots. No witty. Rare mindset. Alas, tough for working class kids. Life harder ahead. Ethan, don't fret. You're top scorer. Study hard. You'll shine. Knowledge changes fate. Natalie encouraged. Yeah, Natalie spot on. I'll grind. Ethan agreed. Knowledge empowers. Less fear, more strength. Serious on studies. Deep tech grasp for company future. Right. Face hurdles head on. You'll overcome. Natalie said. Oh, you called her Gracie? So you. Natalie shifted, dodging heavy. Grace blushed. Open. You guessed. We're dating? Aha. Knew it. From interview vibes. Natalie teased. Well praised. Ethan, lucky guy. Stunning girlfriend, jealous. Flattering. Ethan beamed. Lifetime luck spent, huh? Grace pinched. Nonsense, like I cursed you? Dating me, no luck left. No, just saying. Ethan backpedaled. Better. Grace satisfied. Natalie envied their sweet. Youth's pure love dreamy. Hey, stop the PDA. Dog food overdose. Can't eat noodles. Natalie joked. Grace stuck tongue. Ate, but passed her bowl's sausage to Ethan. Isendak. No liver. Dan. No swap. Fine. Next time double liver. Grace pouted. She added. You pay. Ethan sighed. Sure. Much as you want. Natalie watched them scrape bowls. Kids thrifty. Ethan, monthly allowance from home? Natalie curious. None, self-support. Ethan slurped bottoms, casual. Natalie jolted, nose stinging. Ambitious kid. College, no parental cash. Part-time work study? Tough. Poor thing. Early responsibility. Top scorer by grit. Now self-funds college. Heart-wrenching. Natalie teared subtly. Ethan, impressive, easing family load. Already amazing. Great job. Praise flowed. But Ethan sheepish. Natalie, too kind. Normal for kids to think of parents. Your mom? Working. Natalie asked. Mom sold produce, but health issues, surgery, no heavy work. Home resting. Ethan said. Natalie nearly cried. Misfortune hits the vulnerable. Dad nearing layoff. Mom jobless. He funds self in college. Brutal life. Ethan, stay strong. Effort, diligence. You'll change fate. Natalie wiped tear, encouraged. Yeah. Ethan paused. Her look. Natalie, we're full. Gotta go enjoy. Ethan set chopsticks, shouldering heavy bag, smiling. Bye. Natalie. Grace held his hand. Sweet farewell. They left. Natalie watched backs. Tough, but companionship. Happiness too. But Ethan's so talented, yet such hardship. Natalie, you okay? We'll offer tissue. Natalie dabbed. Fine, just touched. World's full of Ethans. Poverty's real. Will shook head. Kitchen yelled. 2 beef brisket noodles. Coming. Will grabbed. Natalie, yours first. Eating. Natalie, almost forgot. Call Westford's PR Ms. Yin. Greet pre-launch interview, or busy later. She dialed, connected. Montserrat. Yen? Chicago TV's Natalie, yes. Around 9 at office. 10 okay for President Ethan interview. Great, see you. Natalie hung, set. Work wraps noon. Will cheered. Yes, half day off. Natalie eyed. Dream, sort footage post. News airs tonight. Will deflated, slurping. Fine, some born elite, some beasts. My luck sucks? Natalie laughed. Eat chatterbox. Finished, to West Ford at Metro Tower. Early Chicago, CBD icon, 45 floors, landmark. Natalie gazed up. Tisk. West Ford new, already here, fast growth. Prime spot, rent steep? Will envied. Natalie scoffed. Here? Rent's last worry. My bad. Narrow view. Will grinned. Let's check West Ford. Natalie smiled. Through grand lobby, elevator. Suited youths joined. Floor. Side part asked. 30 thanks. Youth envied. 30? U.S. Ford? Jealous. Huh. No, reporter. You know me? Natalie joked. Sorry, thought staff. Youth apologized. Ascending. Natalie. Sounded fan of West Ford? Youth. Not just me. Whole building. Unsaid. Others chuckled. What? Natalie asked. Youth whispered. Envied perks, but boss hates it. West Ford chance. Who'd stay? Another sighed enviously. Natalie stunned. Such pull? Ding, 30. Out. Vast front desk lit West Ford wall. Doors flanked by launch baskets. Festive. First seeing such sleek desk, eye-opener. Staff waited. Chicago TV's Natalie? Yes. Natalie nodded. But Will gawked, grandma and garden vibe. Will focus. Natalie elbowed. Yeah. Will snapped still. Gorgeous design art. Boss's taste. Staff gestured. In Ms. Yin soon. Natalie entered. Line lights, circles, modern, extending deep. My God. 1 floor West Fords. Natalie amazed. Staff proud. Yes, but 3. 30-32. What? T3. Natalie jaw drop. CBD gold. 3 floors? Unbelievable. Who buys new startup tale? Then, suited woman approached, poised, hair up crisp. Natalie, Yenzi. Warm greet, handshake. Montserrat. Yen, busy. Thanks for hosting. Natalie polite. Nah, my job, media docking. Tour? Need say. Yen seamless. Chatted, toured 30. Will shot footage for news. Ms. Yen, 3 floors leased. Natalie incredulous. Yeah, recent. Started 500 SQ foot. Grew, expanded. Layer not enough post reorg. President leased 3. Skip moves. Years worth. Yen smiled. Years. Worth. Natalie puzzled. 3 floors? Yen sensed. Proud. Per president's plan. Staff doubles next year. Or more. Space short. Scouting buys. Office buildings. Huh. Buy. Building. Natalie gaped. New firm. Under 2 years buying? Madness. Natalie toured offices with Yen Ji. Desks computered. Greened. Such setup? State level rare. Private startup? Shocking. Clean. Warm. Elevator envy clear. Natalie spotted West Ford tech sign. Ms. Yen. Group has 4 subs. Toured only tech. Lots empty. Yen smiled. Others 31. Tech's core. 361 PC safety manager. 200 plus staff. 150 tech. Develop. Maintain 361. Expand web products. Natalie mouth agape. Core not electronics. Not hardware. Web. More developing. Natalie curious. Yen mysterious. Can't spill. President might. Ok. Natalie nodded, but itch intensified. West Ford's essence? Vision? Toured 30-31. Saturday. Yet busy. Hundreds working. TSK. More than us OT, huh? Will joked. Yen shook. Mostly shifts. Off Monday through Tuesday. Group mandates 5 on 2 off. No non-essential OT. OT needs strict approval. Caught sneaking. Harsh penalty. Department OT caps hit. Higher for rotation. Will? Natalie. Nanny? Such policy? Natalie stunned. World with no OT firms. Magical. Bosses. People plentiful. Don't work. Others will. Downturn. Cut costs. 1 does 2's work. HR big cost. Minimize for max profit. Capital 101. But Westford flips. Mandates no OT. Unreal. Will smacked lips. No wonder envy. Beats 90% privates? Natalie lip twitched. Make it 99. Yen beamed at praise. Others? Dunno, but love West Ford. Second home. Talent shines. Respect given. Exaggerate? Staff satisfaction. 100%. Human first, people core, group foundation. Natalie sighed. Amazing, but me? Nah, impossible. Ms. Yen, total staff now. 450 formal, some temps. Yen said. Hiss. Natalie shook. 6 months? $450,000 already. Monthly HR? $80,000 to $100,000? Plus rent, operations, $1 million minimum, likely more. Flip. Westford. Profits huge. No cash, no boom. Natalie, to 32. Yen invited. HM? 31 holds thousands. 32's what? Natalie puzzled. Yen teased. Suspense, see upstairs. Natalie blanked. Curiosity max. Followed to 32. 32. No office. Lounges galore. Entrance. Folks setting launch venue. Arches, baskets, sign in. Formal grand. Natalie paused. Venue here. Today's launch spot. Also staff dining, rest, gym, leisure. Yen said. What? Whole floor non-office. Cafeteria. Natalie shocked. Prime space for eats, workouts? Lavish. Yeah. You see's main cafe. Left gym, right rest, with self-serve coffee. Try? Yen asked, leading to lounge coffee. Yen made 2 cups. Natalie, sat, sipping, eyeing chic space dreamy. Natalie, jump ship? Bitter joked. Truth, tempting. Natalie lip twitched. You? Janitor? Drink, bathroom. Natalie asked direction. Solo. Touch up, wake up. Thought small firm, quick chat home. But here? Overturned views, president's interview. Ultra curious. What leader builds this miracle? 12-point focus needed. Made up, out, bump-suited youth, early 20s, maybe less, goofy, likely junior. Hey, U.S. Ford? Natalie casual. Yeah, you. Goofy-eyed her. Yeah. Reporter. Launch today. Chat with president. Natalie smiled. Oh, welcome. Goofy warmed on interview. Walking, chatting. Natalie, hey kid, president. Easy to deal with. He's great to get along with. Our Ford. Cough. President Ford is approachable and a leader deeply loved by his employees. The honest-looking young man spoke with absolute certainty, practically raising his hand to swear an oath. Is that so? What does he like to do in his spare time? Do you know? Natalie Young continued her line of questioning. The young man scratched his head, thought seriously for a moment, and replied, He likes coffee. Yeah, definitely coffee. Instantly, an image formed in Natalie's mind. A silver-haired old man sitting dignified before a coffee table, speaking eloquently about grand strategies and the state of the world. Perhaps only an elder with such profound wisdom could lead a company's development so rapidly. Hey, by the way, since you guys are interviewing, do we have a chance to be on TV? The young man asked, his face full of anticipation. Of course. Our station leadership attaches great importance to this assignment. Since they sent us, you'll definitely be on TV. However, airtime is limited, so not everyone can make the final cut. I hope you understand, Natalie said, giving him a gentle reality check. Generally, the camera wouldn't focus on low-level employees. The main footage would be reserved for the corporate executives. Is that right? Well, if I can just show my face, I'll be satisfied. But it doesn't matter, whatever happens, happens, the young man laughed, taking in stride. Talking and laughing, the two returned to the coffee break area. Natalie's mouth was dry from chatting. She sat down and downed her coffee in one large gulp. She looked around with the paper cup in her hand, but couldn't see a trash can. No trash can. She looked up at the honest young man who was about to leave and asked, Young man, I can't find a trash can right now. Could you help me throw this away? Hey, mine too. Well, Grant raised his paper cup. No problem. Easy stuff. The young man chuckled honestly, took their cups, turned, and tossed them into a pristine, pillar-style trash can with a flip lid nearby. Natalie felt a bit awkward watching this. She had thought that sleek metal cylinder was the base for some decorative statue. She had to admit, Westford Group was so high-end that even their trash cans looked artistic. Just then, Yancey walked over from a distance, smiling and greeting the honest young man as they passed, even bowing slightly. Natalie was surprised by this scene. Yancey seemed incredibly approachable, showing such respect to a junior employee. After the greeting, Yancey walked up to them holding 2 bottles of mineral water. She smiled. Reporter Young, I wasn't sure if you like coffee, so please take these waters for now. Wow, Manager Yin, you're too thoughtful, and your employees are so enthusiastic about us, too. That young man just now was great. He knows quite a lot about the company, Natalie praised. Yancey looked back, surprised. Reporter Young, are you talking about Mr. Turner? Huh, Mr. Turner? Who? Natalie asked, stunned. The one just now? I saw you chatting so happily I thought you knew each other. Yancey laughed. Cough. What? He's one of your executives? Natalie choked on her water, asking in shock. Yes, he is the general manager of our subsidiary, Westford Electronics. Wayne Turner. Mr. Turner is also my old boss, Yancey said respectfully. Cough, cough. Natalie hurriedly patted her chest to catch her breath. That young guy. Oh no, that person is really your leader? He's so young, Natalie asked repeatedly, finding it hard to believe. She remembered she had just asked a corporate general manager to throw away her trash. Thinking of this, she felt terribly apologetic. How embarrassing. But who would have thought such a 20-something young man would be a subsidiary GM? If no one said anything, who would believe it? Yes, don't let Mr. Turner's youth fool you. He does things cleanly and efficiently. Currently, the specific operations of Westford Electronics are all handled by him. Under his leadership, Westford Electronics is the second highest revenue generator for our group, Yancey stated solemnly. Natalie clicked her tongue in secret amazement. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Cough. Well, I didn't mean anything else. I'm just surprised that Mr. Turner is so young and promising, Natalie explained. Yancey covered her mouth and laughed. Is that so? Actually, at Westford Group, that's not uncommon. What? Natalie didn't quite understand. Ring, ring, ring. Yancey's cell phone rang, interrupting their conversation. Seeing the screen, her expression turned serious. She instinctively stood up straighter, her attitude respectful. Hello, President. It's me. Okay, I understand. It's about time now. I'll keep an eye on it. The other colleagues are ready for the reception. Don't worry, everything is going smoothly. President, the reporters from a Chicago TV station are here. Okay, I understand. Hanging up the phone, Yancey checked her watch and said to Natalie, Reporter Young, it's about time. The president has to meet a few friends later, so you can go in for the interview now. Okay, no problem. It's the scheduled time anyway. I'll finish the interview as quickly as possible and won't cause a delay, Natalie said, standing up immediately. Follow me. I'll take you to see the president. Yancey extended her hand to lead the way. The three of them went down to the 30th floor. Yancey led them directly to the president's office. Arriving at the door, Natalie couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She had met many entrepreneurs before, but for some reason, she was tense this time. Perhaps it was out of respect for an entrepreneur who had created such an outstanding company. She straightened her clothes and took a deep breath. Knock, knock, knock. President, Reporter Young is here. Yancey knocked respectfully on the door. Come in. A steady voice came from inside. But to Natalie, the voice sounded slightly familiar, and it didn't sound like the elderly man she had imagined. Yancey pushed the door open and smiled. Please come in. Natalie nodded and led Will Grant into the office. It was called an office, but upon opening the door, it revealed a massive reception lounge. The overall tone was gray, accented with dark gold decorations. The furniture and ornaments were clearly high-end. These elements combined to give the space a minimalist, understated, yet atmospheric vibe. Behind the lounge area were huge floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the bustling Chicago cityscape, giving one the feeling of standing atop the world. Natalie and Will were immediately struck by the breathtaking view, but she quickly reacted, turning her head to the left. That was the office area. There was a huge silver-gray desk, and behind it, a man in a suit was working with his head down. From a side profile, she couldn't see his face clearly. Yancey led them to the desk and said respectfully, President, this is Reporter Young, and this is Cameraman Grant. President Ford, hello. Natalie bowed slightly and greeted him instinctively. Reporter Young? A surprised voice suddenly rang out. Natalie found the voice extremely familiar. She looked up abruptly, and a familiar face, wearing a kind smile, appeared before her. Smack! She was instantly dumbfounded, her notebook falling to the floor. Beside her, Will Grant stared forward, his eyes wide as saucers in disbelief. He immediately covered his mouth with his hand to stop himself from shouting out loud. Natalie was frozen in place, shocked beyond words, her heart churning like a monstrous wave. She had racked her brain, but she never imagined that the president of Westford Group would be him. She couldn't believe her eyes. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Ethan Ford. Natalie stared blankly at the young man before her. He was dressed in a sharp, high-end suit, a diamond-encrusted watch glinting on his wrist. His hair was styled up in a sleek, modern cut. His entire aura had undergone a complete transformation from before. The rawness of youth had faded, replaced by a steady, mature, and refined elegance. And he was handsome. If the face weren't exactly the same, she would have sworn they were two different people. Ethan Ford. Natalie wasn't quite sure yet, so she asked again. Ethan stood up, spread his arms, and smiled. What? Do I not look like myself, Reporter Young? Natalie snapped out of her trance, let out a heavy breath, and feeling a bit embarrassed by her loss of composure, stammered, no. Hello, President Ford. She quickly picked up her notebook from the floor and stood properly. She knew that right now. She represented the TV station. She was here to interview the founder and president of West Ford Group. She had to mind her image. But inside, she was mocking herself. Just moments ago, she was feeling sorry for his living situation, thinking he was struggling. It turned out the clown was her. It turned out the state valedictorian, Ethan Ford, was the Ethan Ford, president of West Ford Group. A rising star entrepreneur worth millions, controlling a dark horse in the industry. No need to be formal. Let's talk in a lounge area. Ethan gestured with his hand. The group moved to the seating area, and Ethan took the main seat. President, if there's nothing else, I'll go get back to work. Yancey bowed slightly. She was tactful. It wasn't appropriate for her to be present for the upcoming private interview segment. Go ahead. Take good care of the guests, Ethan nodded. After Yancey left, Natalie cleared her throat twice and straightened her expression. President Ford, I'm very glad you could accept our interview today. To save your time, shall we start now? Ethan gestured that they could proceed. Well, Grant immediately took out the filming equipment, set up the DSLR on a tripod between Ethan and Natalie, focused the lens on them, pressed record, and signaled OK. Natalie took out her notebook, which contained the various questions she had prepared in advance. She took a deep breath, flashed her trademark reporter smile, and asked, President Ford, I toured your company this morning. What I found incredible is how mature your corporate structure is and how superior the office environment is. It's hard to believe this is a company founded less than a year ago. Could you introduce to our audience what kind of enterprise you have founded and why it has developed so well? This is something I believe everyone, wants to know. Ethan sat up straight, his expression calm, and replied, West Ford Group is a technology company rooted in the internet industry. Currently, our main business directions are network security, computer components, e-commerce, and electronic sports. I never defined the company as merely an internet company or an electronic sales company, but rather as a technology company, because I have always believed that technology changes lives. Technology is the foundation of all development. The blood of innovation must flow through the entire corporate body. Only then can we confidently say we are a technology company. West Ford Group started from computer repairs and selling parts. From having no storefront to our first store, we experienced various problems and difficulties along the way. But we firmly believed that our direction was right. The path was correct. As long as we walked it with unwavering faith, we could create a new world. Fortunately, we did it. If you don't do something, the result is zero. Only by doing it is there a possibility of becoming one and having a future. So, firm belief and execution are the fundamental driving forces behind our rapid development. Ethan's calm, composed demeanor and eloquent speech surprised Natalie. It seemed as if this young man had experienced many such occasions, forging a heart of steel. So young, where did he get this experience? And his words resonated with sincerity. Every sentence felt like a genuine expression, yet if you listened carefully, he didn't really reveal any corporate secrets. But you couldn't say he didn't make sense. He was so polished that one couldn't find a single flaw. Natalie thought for a moment and continued, President Ford, you just said you founded a technology company. As a tech enterprise, what is your vision for the future? Ethan looked at her, smiled slightly, and said, Our corporate vision is simple, to help achieve overall industrial upgrades for the country, to enrich the nation and strengthen the people. You could say that the ultimate goal. Natalie was stunned, shaken by his profound gaze and plain words. His eyes seemed capable of piercing through the past and future, deep, insightful, and incredibly firm. It seemed that this ultimate goal was something he was destined to achieve. The vision was simple, yet so great and heavy. Is President Ford learning from the great industrialists of the past? Natalie asked with a smile. Ethan nodded honestly and countered, Of course. Otherwise, should I learn from the venture capitalists? He clasped his hands on his knees and said calmly, Our country's industry has seen hard times. We learned a harsh lesson. Lag behind, and you get beaten. We watched our manufacturing base hollow out, our backbone weaken. It was the countless pioneers, the industrial patriots, who used their sweat and grit to rebuild that backbone, so we don't have to rely on anyone else to survive. Don't they deserve our respect and emulation? Everyone can choose their own way to support this country. I will use mine. We are standing tall again. From now on, no one can make us kneel. These words were spoken so calmly, yet they were soul-stirring. Natalie's heart couldn't calm down for a long time. So, this was Ethan's original intention for founding the company and his vision for the future. Having such a grand perspective and sentiment was enough to command respect. No wonder she saw the shadow of a future corporate giant in Westford Group. Here, there was no sweatshop oppression. Everyone worked wholeheartedly for the company, dedicated because they knew their work had meaning. Whether realizing personal value or social value, they could achieve it in such a company. She bowed slightly to Ethan to show respect and said seriously, "President Ford's vision is truly rare in the business world. I admire it greatly." Ethan waved his hand, smiling humbly. "You praise me too much. We are just doing what we should do, nothing more. It's just that our current strength is still small. There isn't much we can do, and not enough to change anything yet." Small. Natalie twitched the corner of her mouth, thinking, "You really are modest. Your company is considered small." At this rate of development, he would probably soon capture the computer parts market in Chicago, maybe even the whole state. And according to Yancey, the 361 PC Manager was already the #1 product in consumer market share. And he calls that small? Westford Group's operating scale is certainly not small. President Ford is too modest. As far as I know, your company's 361 product already has the #1 market share, right? Natalie said. Ethan sat up straight and shrugged. It's just #1 for now. With the explosive growth of new internet users, the competition in this field will be fierce in the future. It's not worth being proud of. And with our current technology, we can't claim to have changed the cybersecurity industry yet. Perhaps when the next version of 361 PC Manager is released, we can say we have certain industry and technological barriers. Natalie asked in surprise, "Does that mean a new version will be released soon?" Ethan smiled. "You can look forward to it. It had been a while since the last official version was released. The tech company's 100-plus technical staff had already polished the next version of the computer manager, applying new technologies guided by Ethan, leading the industry by more than 5 years. Possessing a generational technological gap was the deepest moat in this field. Seeing that Ethan was tight-lipped and didn't intend to share more specific news, Natalie had to let it go and continued asking, "President Ford, do you have any specific plans for the future? Can you reveal a little bit to us?" Ethan nodded and said, "That's no problem. Besides the upcoming release of the new 361 version, at today's opening ceremony, we will also announce a new business line for the electronic sports company, Westford Cyber Cafes. Another thing is we have reached a strategic partnership with Key Tech. Westford Electronic Stores will expand to all districts of Chicago within a month, including other counties, becoming the company with the highest number of offline stores in the state. Also, our Westford e-commerce will be further reorganized. Relying on the traffic from 361, we will build an open electronic sales platform, establishing a dual B2B and B2C structure, and we will build our own controllable logistics and warehousing. And we also have plans to enter traditional manufacturing, consumer electronics, apparel, and other industries, using technology to upgrade these sectors. We have a lot to do in the future, and we hope more talent will join our company." This last sentence was Ethan's true intention. He hoped that through business expansion, more talented people would know about Westford Group and choose to join. This was the fundamental reason for organizing the media to attend the opening ceremony and conducting in-depth interviews. Brand building for an enterprise requires media dissemination and image shaping to get more people to recognize the corporate brand. Hearing Ethan's words, Natalie opened her mouth in shock, unable to speak for a moment. If it were anyone else, she would definitely have warned them that taking too big a step might tear something. But the person in front of her was the president of Westford Group. She could only say, his ambition was massive. It seems President Ford's layout is truly grand. There may be many difficulties involved, but I believe you can overcome them one by one because, after all, you are the state top scorer, Natalie exclaimed in admiration. A young man who had just finished his college entrance exams not long ago and was still in university, yet was already at the helm of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. How many such monstrous talents could there be in the world? This was exactly why Natalie didn't easily question his plans. Since such miraculous things had already happened, what was a little ambition? Haha, then I'll borrow your good words, Reporter Young. Ethan laughed heartily. Subsequently, Natalie continued to interview Ethan about corporate management and then chatted a bit about his personal life. With that, the interview was considered successfully concluded. After asking her questions, Natalie checked the time on her phone. She hadn't expected it to be 11:30 already. Chatting away, it had gone longer than expected. She quickly said, "President Ford, I'm really sorry for taking up so much of your time. Thank you again for accepting our interview." Ethan waved his hand, indicating it didn't matter, and then stood up. "Also, thank you for coming to our opening ceremony. It's about time now, shall we? I have some old friends to meet." "Okay, President Ford." Natalie stepped forward to shake his hand, then left with Will Grant. After Natalie and Will left the office, they first went to a rest area to get some water. TSK, Natalie, classmate Ethan. "Oh no, President Ford is really amazing. Founding such a big company at such a young age. It really makes you jealous comparing yourself to others." Will sighed, his voice full of envy. Natalie let out a long breath. "Yeah, it really is incredible. Genius isn't even enough to describe him anymore. But from the interview just now, I feel like having a young entrepreneur with such ambition is actually a pretty good thing, haha." Ethan arrived at the VIP lounge on the 32nd floor. As soon as he pushed the door open, he saw Grace Miller standing in front of the mirror, fiddling with her long black dress. Underneath the dress were alluring black stockings. "Gracie, you don't need to look in a mirror anymore. No matter how much you look, you can't get any prettier because you're already the most beautiful woman here today," Ethan teased. Hearing his voice, Grace turned around and puffed out her cheeks. "You and your slick tongue. Is your interview over?" "Yeah, just finished. Coincidentally, it was the two people we ate breakfast with this morning," Ethan laughed. "Huh, it was them? Oh, right. They did seem like they were from the TV station," Grace recalled. Her gaze suddenly landed on Ethan's tie. It looked a bit loose and slightly crooked. "Don't move, your tie is crooked. I'll fix it for you." She walked up and carefully adjusted it for him. Suddenly, a faint fragrance drifted into Ethan's nose, making him feel a sudden heat rise in his body. He looked down at Grace. Her flawless white cheeks were filled with seriousness, and her long eyelashes fluttered, looking incredibly cute. The black formal dress made her skin look even whiter, translucent like jade, giving one the urge to hold her in their palm and cherish her. Ethan swallowed hard. This girl was becoming harder and harder to resist. "Okay, done." Grace looked at her masterpiece with satisfaction, then looked up to meet Ethan's burning gaze. Her cheeks flushed red instantly. "Why are you looking at me like that?" She blushed, but still tilted her head up to stare back at him. She looked like she wasn't nervous at all, but in reality, her little heart was pounding, almost jumping out of her chest. "Stupid Ethan, are you thinking bad thoughts again? You such a villain. But there's no one here right now, so it should be okay. Come on, I'm ready." Grace closed her eyes slightly, instinctively puckering her cute red lips, seemingly expecting something. "Don't move," Ethan whispered suddenly. Grace's heart nearly leaped out. She cried out internally, "Dummy, I'm not moving." His breathing got closer. Grace could already feel Ethan's breath. Thump, thump, thump. Her heart beat rapidly. Why hasn't anything happened yet? Just as she was about to open her eyes, Ethan suddenly said, "Don't move. Keep your eyelashes still. There seems to be something dirty on them." "Grace." Straight face, winky face. "Ugh, you stupid Ethan. You really know how to ruin the mood. All right, I got it off for you." Ethan pinched a tiny piece of fluff from her eyelash, clapped his hands, and smiled. Grace opened her eyes abruptly, glaring at him. "Stupid Ethan." "Oh, what's wrong?" Ethan asked, surprised. Jerk. Looks like I have to take matters into my own hands." With that, Grace cupped his face with both hands, stood on her tiptoes, and kissed him. "MMPH?" Ethan's pupils dilated. "Holy crap. Grace, you're so aggressive." "But, I like it." But just then, the sound of the door opening rang out. "Huh, Ethan, Mr. Powers and the others are here." Tank shouted happily. But the next moment, seeing the scene inside, he froze. "Crap, I messed up big time." Grace heard the voice and let go of Ethan in a panic, her cheeks turning as red as an apple. A vein popped on Ethan's forehead. He slowly turned his head, glared at Tank, and cursed with a laugh. "Damn it, Tank, your timing is impeccable." Cough, cough. "Ethan, I really didn't mean to. I swear. Saw thee. Next time I'll definitely knock first." Tank begged for mercy repeatedly. Ethan laughed helplessly. All right. Where are Neil and the others?" Congratulations, brother Ethan. Wishing you a grand opening." Neil Powers' hearty laughter came from outside, and then he strode in, followed by Charlie Boone and Joe Thompson, whom Ethan had met before, as well as the boss of the tech tower. Congratulations, President Ford. Charlie Boone cupped his hands and smiled. TSK, creating such a large foundation at such a young age. President Ford is truly amazing. Joe Thompson praised. The other bosses also stepped forward to congratulate Ethan. Ethan went up to exchange pleasantries with everyone. Brother Neil, and everyone, your presence really gives me face. It's an honor, Ethan said politely. Neil Powers looked around and suddenly asked, By the way, I don't see President Zane. Did you forget to notify him, Brother Ethan? He didn't know yet that Ethan and Frank Zane had fallen out. Ethan just smiled. No, I didn't notify him. President Zane is a busy man. He might not necessarily come. Neil paused, sensing the hidden meaning in the words. It seemed Ethan and Frank's relationship wasn't great. He didn't know the reason and didn't probe further. In this setting, he had to give Ethan face. It's about time. Everyone, please. The opening ceremony is about to start. Ethan smiled at the group. The bosses nodded and turned to go out. Ethan instructed Tank to take care of the guests, then turned back to Beck and Grace, smiling. Come, my most beautiful Miss Miller. Grace smiled sweetly and gracefully stepped forward to take Ethan's arm. Let's go, my big President Ford. Natalie stood in the crowd at the ceremony site. She had no interest in chatting with the bosses and executives present. Instead, she stared intently at the various Chinese and Western desserts on the tables lining both sides of the room. Strawberry cake, sweetheart pastry, and vanilla ice cream. I want them all. Like someone discovering treasure, she lingered around the tables, the food on her plate piling up like a small mountain. Cough, cough, Nat, let's watch the image. You're the station's star anchor. Will Grant reminded her kindly from the side. Natalie snapped back to reality, reluctantly stopping her hand. She laughed at herself. Hey, I usually can't bring myself to buy these things. Now that it's rare free food, I got a little dizzy. All right, I know, I'll just eat this little bit. Hey, Nat, don't get busy eating yet. The ceremony is about to start. We're standing out like this. It feels like we're just here to mooch food. Don't let the other colleagues look down on us. Will whispered. Natalie turned to look to the left at a group of people carrying various camera equipment, reporters from various newspapers and media outlets. To the right was a large crowd of guests, including many business owners. As the music started, everyone gathered toward the stage. Okay, let's go over. We're done with work anyway. We could just stand in the back. You grab some supplementary footage. I'll eat a little back there. Natalie laughed. Will twitched the corner of his mouth, thinking to himself, I really shouldn't have let her see the desserts. The two followed the crowd toward the stage and saw Ethan and Grace holding hands, walking to the front. Reporters whipped out their cameras and camcorders, flashes blinking incessantly. In this moment, Ethan and Grace became the focus of the entire venue. Handsome man, beautiful woman. Truly a match made in heaven, Natalie sighed, taking a bite of cake. TSK. President Ford is winning at life. Will pressed the shutter, snapping several photos in succession. On stage, Ethan bowed to everyone to show his appreciation and said in a clear voice, Welcome everyone to the West Ford Group opening ceremony. I am deeply honored, and I would like to express my gratitude to you all first. Clap, clap, clap. The scene responded with warm applause. Grace looked at the 300 or 400 people in the room, nervously gripping Ethan's hand, her whole body stiff. It was her first time facing such an occasion. Being nervous was inevitable. Ethan gently squeezed her hand, signaling her not to be nervous, that he was there. As the applause died down, Ethan smiled. Here, I want to share a little story with everyone. The name, West Ford Group. Well, Ford is obviously me. And the West. It represents the direction we look toward, the future. But privately, it stands for the horizon where Grace and I began this journey. It also carries the expectations we both have for this enterprise. Call it a little bit of romance I have for her. Hearing this, Grace's cheeks flushed. She was thin-skinned and wasn't quite used to spreading PDA in front of so many people. The crowd, on the other hand, loved the drama and started cheering. When are you getting married? President Ford will definitely come to celebrate, right? Talented man and beautiful woman, a perfect match. Oh ho, President Ford, get us a boss lady soon. Facing the urging of hundreds of people who seemed ready to drag the marriage bureau over right then and there, Grace turned as red as an apple. Her eyes darted around, looking at the ceiling, pretending she couldn't hear anything. Ethan raised his hand to calm them down, smiling. All right. If we hold a wedding banquet, we will definitely invite everyone. I am very happy today that West Ford Group is officially open. To celebrate the group's opening, There's another unveiling ceremony today. With that, Ethan turned to look at Henry Payne and signaled him. Henry nodded, and the lights in the venue dimmed. Grace finally let out a heavy sigh of relief. Without everyone staring at her, she wasn't as nervous. She quickly whispered to Ethan, Master Ford, I'm never standing on stage with you again. I'm slipping away first. Before she finished speaking, Grace lifted her dress and walked quickly off the stage, as if escaping. Ethan shook his head and smiled. That girl still so shy. At this moment, Henry led 4 employees, pushing a cart covered with a red cloth onto the stage. The projection screen behind them lit up. Everyone stared curiously at the object, wondering what was under the red cloth. Natalie and Will squeezed into the crowd, also staring with great curiosity, wanting to know what was hidden on the cart. Ethan and Henry walked to opposite sides of the cart. Ethan announced loudly to everyone, Today, I solemnly introduce to you another fist product of West Ford Group, West Ford Cyber Cafes. He and Henry pulled off the red curtain together. The words West Ford Gaming in deep blue appeared before everyone's eyes. Immediately after, the projection screen behind them lit up, showing exquisite photos of West Ford Cyber Cafes. The main color tone was gray and black, paired with leather sofa chairs. The decor was fashionable and trendy, with excellent atmosphere design. In the photos, there were rows of neatly arranged desktop towers. A random photo showed dozens, even hundreds of computers, a truly spectacular scene. As the images appeared, the crowd erupted in an uproar. Neil Power's eyes went wide with shock. It was his first time seeing an internet cafe on such a scale. And not just one store, but 3. My goodness, my little brother Ethan really doesn't speak unless he's ready to stun the world. He had heard mention of an internet cafe project, but he didn't expect it to be this big. Natalie and Will were also shocked by the environment and scale of the internet cafe. Oh my God, this has to be the largest chain internet cafe in the city, right? Natalie exclaimed. Judging from the photos, the scale of each store was completely extraordinary. Click, click! Reporters frantically pressed their shutters, flashes blinking densely. Ethan listened to the exclamations from the stage, very satisfied. He wanted to use this opportunity to promote the internet cafes, debuting at the peak. Next, let me introduce to you the general manager of West Ford Gaming, a subsidiary of West Ford Group, Mr. Henry Payne. Ethan introduced to the crowd. Henry had a look of uncontrollable excitement on his face. He took a step forward, bowed to the crowd, and then stepped back. Facing so many guests and reporters, all of this felt like a dream to him. Who could have imagined that more than half a year ago, he was a young man scavenging through leftover garbage on the roadside to fill his stomach, his future bleak. Yet now he was the top man, the general manager of a group subsidiary. His fate, his life began to change the moment he met Ethan, completely changed. In his view, Ethan had essentially given him a second life. The gratitude was akin to being reborn. Therefore, he executed every task Ethan ordered unconditionally and perfectly. He put his heart into every job, never slacking off, working himself to the bone. From the formation of the West Ford Gaming Management Team, personnel recruitment, internet cafe operations management, to logistics support, he personally oversaw everything, down to the smallest detail. There was a legend of a workaholic circulating in West Ford Group, and it was about him. If tasks that had to be done today weren't finished, no matter how late, he would finish them before clocking out. If the staff underneath didn't do their jobs well, he would scold them severely, but he would also help them finish the work together. His strict management earned the trust and respect of his subordinates. Natalie observed Henry, whose face remained as calm as an ancient well on stage. She was secretly surprised. She saw a temperament in this young man that didn't exist in his peers, steady, introverted. If it were any other young man, holding such a position in his early 20s would surely make him overjoyed and high-spirited. Because this position was enough to look down on the younger generation, giving him the capital to be arrogant. But Henry didn't. On the contrary, he was very reserved, not showing even a hint of youthful brashness. What kind of monsters are the young people around President Ford? Natalie murmured. The Mr. Turner she met earlier, plus this Mr. Payne, were both young men of the same age, yet completely different from ordinary youth. Both were entrusted with heavy responsibilities by Ethan, becoming his right and left arms. But on second thought, Natalie realized the most monstrous one had to be President Ford himself. On stage, Ethan took 2 steps forward, then turned sideways and pointed to the large projection screen, smiling. What you are seeing now are our 3 flagship internet cafes. Each store is equipped with 200 mid to high-end computers. Hearing that each internet cafe had 200 computers, the crowd instantly went into an uproar. Oh my God, that huge! How much money did that take to invest? Total investment has to be at least 5 or 6 million, right? West Ford Group really has deep pockets. Neil Powers clicked his tongue in secret. Brother Ethan, you really play big. A single store with 200 computers was indeed the largest single store scale in Chicago, maybe even the state. But he didn't expect Ethan to throw out even more shocking news next. Ethan looked at the crowd and said with conviction, I officially announce West Ford Gaming's new strategy. Within the next year, we will expand to 30 stores of this scale across Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and Houston. The crowd exploded instantly upon hearing this. Neil Powers almost dropped his jaw. Holy crap, what? Opening 30 chain internet cafes in a year. Brother Ethan, are you crazy? Natalie's jaw dropped in astonishment. She found it hard to believe that Ethan would announce such a crazy strategic intent. 30 chain internet cafes in 1 year. The investment would have to be at least $4 or $5 million. How could he be so certain that internet cafes would make money? Why was he so confident? Nat, President Ford, has he lost his mind? Will asked, stunned from beside her. Natalie gave a bitter laugh. How should I know? But to found such a big company at such a young age, he shouldn't be crazy. Would someone that monstrously talented lose his mind? Or is there a business opportunity in there that we can't see? The crowd buzzed with discussion, everyone shocked by the news Ethan had thrown out. Only Ethan and Henry on stage remained relatively calm. Ethan turned back and waved his hand, signaling to switch the projection screen image. A moment later, a new projection appeared, a computer configuration list. The appearance of a spec sheet instantly attracted everyone's attention, surprising them even more. Neil Powers was the first to spot the details, clicking his tongue in shock. Holy crap, does an internet cafe need these kinds of specs? Ethan introduced to everyone. These are the two main computer configurations for our internet cafes, the Elite Edition and the Deluxe Edition. For the Elite Edition, we mainly use the Intel Pentium 2 processor, paired with the Kirin 748 motherboard. For memory, we chose product from major manufacturers like Samsung, with RAM as high as 64 MB. And the Elite Edition uses a Philips 105A monitor, and a hard drive is a Seagate 4. 3G. Compared to the Elite Edition, the Deluxe Edition upgrades to a Pentium 3, and the RAM is upgraded to 128 megabytes, far exceeding the configuration of ordinary internet cafes, giving users the best experience. Neil Powers twitched the corner of his mouth. Such configurations indeed crushed all other internet cafes on the market, but the price surely wouldn't be low. It would definitely be no less than $5 an hour. If this hardware was purchased from secondary market agents, the higher cost would definitely drive up the usage price. But Ethan's next words left him dumbfounded. Our internet cafe pricing is Elite Edition configuration at $3 an hour and Deluxe Edition configuration at $5 an hour. Ethan announced, What? $3 an hour for these specs? Neil was confused. Internet cafe prices were basically in the $5 to $10 range for high-end spots, and even many low-spec shady cyber shacks charged $3 an hour. Such high specs priced at only $3 an hour. Surfing environment, computer configuration, price. Wouldn't this crush other internet cafes in every aspect? It was practically a dimensional strike against the competition. Brother Ethan, this tactic is ruthless. He could already foresee the explosive popularity of the internet cafes once they opened. From any angle, there wasn't a single internet cafe in Chicago that could be a qualified competitor. They would be completely bulldozed by West Ford Gaming. He paused, suddenly realizing why Ethan had held this opening ceremony. Given Ethan's low-key personality, he generally wouldn't make such a big fanfare. Holding a high-profile opening ceremony this time, the main act was probably to build momentum for West Ford Gaming. He turned to look at the group of reporters on the left. West Ford Group was bound to become famous, and with media reports, West Ford Gaming would save a massive amount of early advertising work. Impressive, Brother Ethan. This plan killed multiple birds with one stone. Neil secretly admired him. On stage, Ethan continued to highlight the advantages of the internet cafes, including on-site services. Finally, Ethan said to the crowd, I welcome everyone to experience it if you have time. Today's opening ceremony ends here. Thank you all for your enthusiastic participation. Clap, clap, clap. Applause washed over the venue like a tide. Many people even gave Ethan a thumbs up, deeply impressed by him. After the ceremony unveiling ended, the lights came back on. The venue was buzzing with voices and began to liven up. After stepping off the stage, Ethan bumped into Neil Powers, Charlie Boone, and other peers. Haha, brother Ethan, you really are something. After today, your internet cafes would just be sitting there printing money, haha. Neil happily punched him lightly on the chest. Hee hee, I'll take your word for it, brother Neil. Ethan laughed. I've arranged another venue next door. Let's go there to chat. Unlike the main venue, the sub-venue was smaller, specifically for receiving peers and West Ford Group's partners. The sub-venue was more like a small circle, with fewer than 100 people, but it basically covered more than half of the enterprises in the Chicago computer sales industry supply chain. Grace wasn't by his side. She was busy finding food. Tank leaned in and asked, Miss Grace, why aren't you going to find brother Ethan? Follow him around, putting on a fake smile. How boring, I don't want to. Grace pouted. She looked up at him from a distance. Seeing Ethan surrounded by many people, talking and laughing, receiving attention as the host with people constantly coming up to greet him and strike up conversations. But looking at him, he seemed very much in his element. But Grace didn't want to get involved. Facing so many strangers, she figured she wouldn't be able to say a single word. Suddenly, an employee walked quickly to Ethan and whispered something in his ear. It seemed like something urgent. Grace just watched curiously, not knowing the situation. What's wrong? Seems like something happened. Grace turned to ask Tank. Tank saw Ethan's expression change, put down the plate in his hand, and said, I'll go check. Tank hurried to Ethan's side and whispered, What's wrong, brother Ethan? Ethan held a champagne glass, a hint of ice in his eyes. Nothing, just someone arriving uninvited. Huh? Who? Tank paused. Who else? President Zane from Southbridge, Ethan said coldly. Just then, Neil walked over quickly, happy. Ha! Brother Ethan, President Zane is here. Hearing this, everyone turned to look at the entrance. Frank Zane of Southbridge Traders controlled many supply channels and had considerable power in the Chicago area. Suddenly, a group of people appeared at the door, with Frank Zane walking at the front, wearing a smile. Oh, President Zane is here. Hello, President Zane. Brenda. A group of bosses and executives from Tech City stepped forward to greet him. Frank politely nodded in response to others, arriving in front of Ethan, surrounded like a star by the moon. Frank stared at Ethan with a smile and extended his hand. President Ford, hello. Congratulations. Ethan's face was calm. He shook his hand briefly and said, President Zane, why are you here? The implication was, I didn't invite you. Why did you come on your own? A flash of malice crossed Frank's eyes, and he sneered, Hee hee, President Ford, today is your opening ceremony. How could such a great day be without me? What? President Ford doesn't welcome me. Frank Zane stared at Ethan, speaking in a joking tone. Huh, President Zane really knows how to joke. How could President Ford not welcome you? Charlie Boone picked up the conversation with a laugh. Exactly, what's our relationship with President Ford? President Zane is just kidding. Joe Thompson chimed in. Neither of them realized the tension, thinking Frank was just jesting. In their impression, Frank and Ethan were old friends. When they first met at the drinking party organized by Neil Powers, everyone hit it off immediately. Back then, Frank was full of praise for Ethan. After a few drinks, they were calling each other brother. Later, they heard that Frank and Ethan had a good cooperation, always pleasant, with frequent exchanges of favors. There were even rumors that Sterling Tech was taken down by Frank and Ethan joining forces, with Frank taking over Sterling's vacated business. With such a solid relationship, how could there be a rift? So the two didn't think in that direction, just assuming Frank was joking. But Neil Powers on the side heard the hidden meaning in Frank's words. Combined with the fact that Ethan seemingly hadn't invited Frank to the opening ceremony, he was already speculating. Now it seemed that between Ethan and Frank, there was a strange atmosphere. Ethan's face was calm. President Zane, one doesn't visit a temple without a cause. You didn't just come to attend my company's opening ceremony, did you? Frank spread his hands and laughed. Correct, you guessed it. President Ford is indeed exceptionally smart. Come, bring up the opening gift I prepared for President Ford. Frank turned back and waved his hand. Two young men in suits carrying briefcases walked up and took out two documents. Frank took one of the documents and waved it, seemingly showing it specifically to the people around him. At first glance, it looked like a contract he was going to give to Ethan. Charlie Boone said enviously, Oh my, President Zane is here to deliver orders? This gift is too practical. Hey, if I knew earlier, I would have held an opening ceremony too, just to sponge off President Zane's benefits, ha. Charlie's words were humorous, drawing a burst of laughter from the surrounding crowd, making the atmosphere lively. Frank, however, let out a cold laugh, and handed the document to Ethan. President Ford, you must accept this grand gift. This is the notification of the termination of strategic cooperation between Southbridge Traders and West Ford Group. You must have wanted to see this, right? Starting today, Southbridge Traders and your West Ford Group completely draw a line. Before Frank's voice even fell, the smiles on everyone's faces froze. The originally lively atmosphere instantly dropped to freezing point, completely solidified. Charlie Boone's eyes widened in shock. He never expected Frank's gift to be a termination notice. Even less did he expect Frank to flip the table and tear up their relationship in front of everyone on the day of Ethan's opening ceremony. Everyone on the scene was stunned, silent as a grave. Neil Power's face changed drastically. Frank was here to cause trouble. Causing trouble on such an important day for Ethan. President Zane, what is this? Neil asked in shock. He didn't know the grudge between the two. Two people who had a good relationship before suddenly turn out like this. Frank said coldly, President Powers, you ask me? Why not ask President Ford first? Ask him, did he reach a cooperation agreement with Key Tech? Neil paused upon hearing this. Key Tech, that state distributor company? Could it be? Brother Ethan, this matter? Neil turned to look at Ethan. Charlie Boone, Joe Thompson, and others also looked at Ethan. They understood that if West Ford Group partnered with Key Tech, they would basically be Key Tech's distribution channel in Chicago. In that case, West Ford Group and Southbridge Traders would be in direct competition, no longer a cooperative relationship. Ethan chuckled lightly. Yeah, so what? My company is an independent entity, not anyone's subsidiary. Do I need anyone's permission to cooperate with other companies? Are you worthy, President Zane? Who do you think you are to hold the keys to my business? As soon as Ethan said this, the crowd went into an uproar. With this, the conflict between the two was completely laid bare. Ethan took the document, didn't even look at it, and handed it directly to Tank. President Zane, if you just want to give me this gift, I've received it. You can leave now. I won't see you out, Ethan said indifferently, swirling his wine glass. Others didn't need to know the grievances between him and Frank, nor did he need to explain. Frank had been eyeing his company for more than a day or two, using threats and inducements several times, and even showing ambition to enter the frontline sales market. So he had long expected this day. From the day Frank cut off the supply of parts, the two sides were no longer fellow travelers, but direct business competitors. Frank kept his hands in his pockets and sneered. President Ford, rushing to kick people out so eagerly? Their gazes met, seemingly sparking with electricity, tit for tat. The scene was dead silent. Everyone's eyes converged on the two men, expressions varying. Some were surprised, some excited, some sullen, and so on. Everyone seemed to have their own thoughts. Neil Powers had mostly embarrassment on his face. Ethan met Frank through the drinking party he organized. Back then, Ethan's business was just starting and he needed Frank. Neil had put in a lot of effort to facilitate their cooperation, but no one expected the two to reach such a state. He muttered to himself that given Ethan's personality, he wasn't likely to offend people easily, especially someone like Frank who had helped him before. There must be hidden reasons, but now he couldn't ask Ethan. He couldn't stop this situation immediately, so he could only stand awkwardly aside, afraid to express any opinion. Charlie Boone and Joe Thompson looked at each other, exchanging a glance. Ethan took a sip of champagne and sneered. What? President Zane can't bear to leave. Planning to stay for dinner. Frank reached out and took the second document. This time, while handing it to Ethan, he suddenly let go, allowing the document to fall to the floor. Frank spread his hands and feigned innocence. Oops, hand slipped. President Ford, this is the second big gift I'm giving you. This is a lawyer's letter from Southbridge Traders to West Ford Group. President Ford, you can sue me, and I can sue you. By the way, let me add one point. President Ford, get ready to respond to the lawsuit. With that, he scanned the surroundings and said coldly, I announce that from today on, West Ford Group is a competitor of my Southbridge Traders and a defendant of my company. Southbridge Traders terminates all business dealings with West Ford Group. Everyone, West Ford Group is cooperating with Key Tech, taking the direct sales route. Whether you cooperate with West Ford Group or with my Southbridge Traders, weigh it carefully yourselves. Frank's words caused the faces of many people present to change drastically. Many channel distributors cast suspicious glances at Ethan. Tank's face was ugly. He knew Frank was deliberately provoking relationships. He wanted to speak up to refute, but Ethan raised a hand to stop him. Seeing that his goal was basically achieved, Frank smiled smugly and mocked. President Ford, oh President Ford, you are still too young. Why didn't you consider the consequences before acting? Hee. I see that not long after your opening ceremony, you should hold a closing banquet. The road is long. Let's see who lasts. After speaking, Frank turned and left. The scene was silent. Then, some people began to follow Frank out one after another. Before long, nearly half of the people had left. Charlie Boone and Joe Thompson turned to leave together. Before leaving, Charlie didn't forget to throw a cold mockery at Ethan. Hee, President Ford. You're on your own from now on. With more than half the people gone, the venue became somewhat deserted, and the atmosphere turned awkward. Running into such a thing at an opening ceremony wasn't a good omen. It was a slap in the face to West Ford Group. If it were anyone else, they would probably be fuming with rage, but Ethan was calm, showing no signs of anger. Tank, however, was furious. Brother Ethan, that guy Frank Zane definitely came specifically to cause trouble. Are we just going to let him drive a wedge between us and our peers like that? Why didn't you let me curse him out? Ethan took a sip of champagne and said calmly, would cursing him be useful? It would only make us look exasperated. Tank was somewhat unwilling. Charlie Boone and those guys are just fair-weather friends. Ethan sneered. What's the rush? Them leaving now means they'll definitely come begging us later. It's better that they left now. It lets us see some people's true colors. No need to get angry with them. Tank paused, not understanding Ethan's meaning. Ethan chuckled lightly. Tank, just wait and see. When our e-commerce platform is built, those people will come back licking our boots. Hearing this, Tank immediately understood Ethan's meaning, and his anger subsided instantly. Brother Ethan, I get it. Tank clenched his fist and nodded heavily. At this time, Neil Powers walked over and smiled bitterly. Brother Ethan, this whole thing. Sigh. How did you and President Zane end up so unhappy? Calling it unhappy was an understatement. They had already flipped the table. Ethan looked at him and said sincerely, Brother Neil, things have reached this point. Do you think there's any room for turning back? Neil remained silent. He knew clearly in his heart. Having reached this state, the two sides were incompatible, difficult to turn back. Ethan continued, Brother Neil, I know this matter makes things difficult for you, but sometimes reality is just this cruel. If I hadn't planned ahead, West Ford Group might not be named Ford, but Zane. Frank Zane coveting the frontline market is a new thing. Do you think I would agree to him threatening me with supply channels? Neil paused, realizing there was such a grudge involved. It seemed that in the face of absolute interest, there were no eternal friends. He then sighed, All right, Brother Ethan, about this matter, I'm probably powerless to help. Ethan knew he was stuck in the middle, unable to help either side. Brother Neil, it's okay. I understand. I will handle this matter myself. Ethan smiled. 3 days later, Southbridge Traders Company. President Zane, I've said hello to everyone I needed to. In the future, in Chicago, or even the state, probably few people will dare to give goods to Ethan Ford. Even if he can get goods, the price definitely won't beat ours. You can rest assured on that point. Charlie Boone laughed, raising his teacup for a sip. Frank smiled and said, that kid Ethan thought he could eat up the Chicago frontline market single-handedly. His ambition is big, his appetite isn't small, but in the end, he's still a bit young. Trying to eat a whole cake alone, it's easy to choke to death. Joe Thompson laughed loudly. Ha ha. Right, President Zane is right. Many of their interests were tied to Frank. They could supplement each other's goods sources and share distribution channels. Originally, if Ethan's West Ford Company only acted as a good part sales channel, he would be a good partner for all three of them. But now that Ethan was cooperating with Key Tech and planning to adopt a direct sales model, this would undoubtedly shake their interests. So these two men didn't hesitate to turn and support Frank, mobilizing relationships within the industry to restrict supply to West Ford Group. Relying solely on the product from Key Tech as agency would be too singular, lacking competitiveness in the market. There was only one goal, to kill West Ford Group. Frank took out cigarettes and distributed them to the two. How have you considered the matter of us jointly laying out channels, using the source advantages in our hands to swallow the Chicago parts market? We have the price advantage. West Ford Group's business in this area will undoubtedly die. Frank's plan was to unite several major suppliers to establish a joint venture subsidiary, building their own sales channels to enter the frontline market. With diverse sources and price advantages, they could completely eat up West Ford Group's share. I think it's very good. President Zane's proposal is excellent. I agree. Charlie Boone lit a cigarette and smiled. Joe Thompson nodded. I agree too. At least, West Ford Electronics shouldn't think about swallowing this cake alone. Hearing their agreement, Frank said happily, Haha, good. With us brothers working together, are we afraid of not making money? As long as we go all out, What does that kid Ethan have to fight us with? Charlie and Joe both nodded in strong agreement. Charlie suddenly asked, by the way, President Zane, how is your lawsuit with Ethan going? Frank flicked his cigarette ash, leaned back on the sofa, and smiled confidently. I'm quite confident about this. After all, I have my people among the referees. How can Ethan win against me? Court opened 2 days ago. Currently, it's still in the stage of submitting new evidence. My company's legal team has 6 people, all from top university law backgrounds, plus lawyers from Chicago's big firm, Trust and Faith Law Firm, jointly forming the legal team. And Westford Group was arrogant enough to arrange only one person for legal affairs. That guy called Ross Lawton or something, truly laughable. How can one person fight my whole legal team? I estimate Westford Group knows their chances of winning aren't great, so they just arranged someone to deal with it perfunctorily. How can I lose this lawsuit? Hearing this, Charlie was amused too. That kid Ethan is really arrogant. I originally thought he would spend heavily to hire some well-known law firms to fight the lawsuit. I didn't expect him to only send his own company's legal counsel. Indeed, laughable. Joe chimed in, that kid Ethan probably figures he can't win the lawsuit anyway. But if you ask me, Frank is the impressive one. The company supports so many legal staff and is willing to hire Trust and Faith. TSK, big spending. Frank blew a smoke ring and sneered. It doesn't matter how much compensation I get. Money is secondary. I just want Westford Group to lose. Let the peers see that Westford Group is nothing but a shell with no strength. Just then, the door opened and Lana Cole walked in. Expressionless, she walked straight to Frank and put down a resignation letter. President Zane, I've handed over my work. Can I go now? Lana said calmly. Frank's face looked a bit ugly. Resigning in front of 2 other bosses, wasn't this giving him no face? He stood up immediately and said coldly, come here for a moment. The two walked to the door of the lounge on the other side of the office. Lana, I know you have resentment in your heart, but I admire your work ability very much. Can't you stay and help me? Frank questioned in a deep voice. Lana smiled miserably. Stay here to help you? Would your wife be happy? President Zane, you really know how to joke. It's fine if she doesn't know, right? Just be a little careful in the future. Lana, honestly, you've been with me for so long. I'm quite reluctant to let you go. Frank switched to a gentle tone, gently stroking her shoulder with one hand. But Lana took a step back, putting distance between them, and said indifferently, President Zane, please have some self-respect. I think I have no reason to stay in the company. Seeing that she wouldn't yield to soft or hard tactics, Frank's face turned cold instantly. He cursed, damn, you want to leave that badly? Then get out. Get far away. I originally wanted to give you a job for old time's sake. Since you don't cherish it, I can't be bothered to keep you. Get out. Lana looked up at him, the corner of her mouth curling into a cold sneer. President Zane, this is your true face, isn't it? I'll just consider those years of youth fed to a dog. Fine, I'm leaving right now. Lana turned and left without hesitation. Frank's face was clouded with uncertainty. Then he spat towards Lana's retreating figure. Bitch. In his heart, Lana Cole was just a woman used to relieve loneliness. Just a plaything, at best a plaything with some workability. Lana left the office, closed the door, and as she walked, took out her phone and dialed a number. Hello, it's me. If it is signed. President Ford, I understand. Frank returned to the reception lounge and plopped down on the sofa, looking visibly upset. Charlie Boone noticed and whispered, What's wrong, President Zane? No need to get angry over a secretary resigning. Just hire another one. You can find any kind you want. Frank stubbed out his cigarette, forced a smile back onto his face, and said, right, President Boone is right. Next time I'll hire an even prettier one. Suddenly, his phone rang. He picked it up and saw it was Larry Reed, the company's legal manager. My legal manager is calling. Should be some good news. Frank laughed happily and answered the phone. Hello, Larry, what's up? President Zane, big trouble. Noon, Chicago court. Frank arrived at a lounge inside the courthouse with a dark face in a frantic rush. Inside the lounge were the 6 legal staff of Southbridge Traders, led by a middle-aged man with a comb-over, legal manager Larry Reed. President Zane. Larry stood up immediately upon seeing Frank, but his face was terrible. Damn it. What the hell is going on? Why are we losing this lawsuit? What? Frank glared at him, eyes spitting fire. When he first heard the news that the internal submission of new evidence materials suggested Southbridge Traders might lose, he was shocked and rushed over. Larry smiled bitterly. President Zane, this ruling is on the case where they sued us for breach of contract before. Originally, we had a response strategy ready. As long as we didn't admit to actively cutting off supply, Westford Group couldn't win against us. But Westford Group's legal counsel is too cunning. Originally, due to insufficient evidence, they were about to rule for a dismissal, and then we would countersue them for accounts payable breach. But that Westford lawyer, Ross Lawton, actually used improper procedure as grounds to demand the court restart the judicial process, stalling us for quite some time. Just 2 days ago, when the new round of evidence submission began, the other side actually obtained the internal stamped notification document of stopping supply. That is our internal company material, and it's key evidence. I can't figure out how they got their hands on it. So, just now word came from inside. We might lose this one. Frank's face changed drastically. Internal documents obtained by the opponent. There was a mole in the company. This thought surfaced in his mind instantly. Suddenly, a figure flashed through his mind. Lana Cole. Could be her. Frank's pupils contracted violently, and his heart instantly went cold. We're the people from Trust and Faith Law Firm. Is there no way to turn the tide? Trust and Faith is such a big firm. They must have a way. Contact them for me immediately. Larry hurriedly said, I'll call right now. With that, Larry took out his mobile phone and dialed Trust and Faith Law Firm. After a while, the call connected. Put Lawyer Lewis on. What? What did you say? Did I need? At the police station. What? This went in. What? Larry's expression changed suddenly, revealing a hint of panic. He immediately put down the phone and said anxiously to Frank, President Zane, this is bad. Lawyer Lewis, who is in charge of this case, has been summoned to the police station. He's been detained. Frank. What? Detained? Frank was stunned dumbfounded. A lawyer from Chicago's famous Trust and Faith Law Firm was actually detained. What kind of international joke was this? Damn, what the hell is going on? Frank grabbed him by the collar in a fury. Larry's face was pale. President Zane, calm down. Trust and Faith just said Lawyer Lewis was detained for witness tampering and obstruction of justice, and the other side refused mediation. He's already in for investigation. Who? Who did it? Frank shoved him away violently, asking repeatedly. It was Westford Group's legal counsel, that guy called Ross Lawton. Larry swallowed hard with difficulty. Frank froze. His entire legal team was actually thrown into chaos by one person. Not only was the lawsuit lost, but even the lawyer was thrown into the slammer. Damn, useless. A bunch of useless trash. What use is it feeding you lot? Trash. He couldn't help but curse loudly. The group of company legal staff felt humiliated, hanging their heads, afraid to reply. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Ooh, Larry went to open the door. A group of police officers appeared at the door. The leading middle-aged officer took out a badge and said sternly, Hello, we are from the Economic Crime Investigation Division. We received a report that Southbridge Traders is suspected of tax evasion and the production and sale of counterfeit products. We have formally filed a case for investigation. We just received news that the person in charge of your company, Frank Zane, came here. Which one of you is Frank Zane? Frank felt like he'd been struck by lightning, standing frozen on the spot. What? Someone reported my company. Officer, this is malicious framing. A complete frame-up. Frank screamed hysterically. The middle-aged officer looked impassive and said coldly, You are Frank Zane? We have received a large amount of reporting materials. You'd better come back with us honestly to accept the investigation. Frank's legs went soft, and he collapsed to the ground, his eyes lifeless. Suddenly, that figure appeared in his mind again. Lana Cole. Aside from Lana and the company finance department, no one else knew about the tax evasion. It must be that bitch. If it really was her, the consequences were unimaginable. She knew too many things. Thinking of this, Frank's heart felt like it had fallen into an icy abyss. A wave of despair surged up. Now, he didn't need to guess to know that Lana must have hooked up with that kid Ethan. This was to destroy him. Damn it. No, you can't take me away. They're my company's legal counsel here. Larry, say something. Frank sat on the ground, yelling angrily at Larry, as if grasping at a straw. Larry didn't want to watch his boss get taken away just like that, so he blocked the officer and asked, Officer, if there is anything, you could talk to us. We are the company's legal counsel. Suddenly, what? Are you planning to obstruct official duties? According to the penal code, obstructing official duties can result in a fixed-term imprisonment of up to 3 years. A deep voice sounded from behind the officer. Immediately after, a middle-aged man wearing gold-rimmed glasses with a refined temperament walked to the front. The corners of his mouth held a confident and calm smile. But this smile made Larry and the other legal staff shudder. "It's you, Ross Lawton." Larry looked shocked, instantly figuring it out. Ross might be the reporter. "What, do you guys want to sit in the cell too?" Ross pushed up his glasses and smiled. Larry's face changed, mostly to helplessness. He lowered his head, afraid to speak. The middle-aged officer waved his hand. "Take Frank Zane away." Two police officers stepped forward, took out silver handcuffs, and handcuffed Frank's wrists. At this moment, Frank's face was written with despair. He didn't expect Ethan's revenge to come so fast, so sharp. He knew everything was over. The next day, Broad City Boulogne Company. Charlie Boone paced back and forth in the office, his face full of worry, his mind heavy. Bang! Joe Thompson pushed open the door abruptly. "Old Charlie, did you get the news too? President Zane has been detained." "How could this happen?" Charlie looked miserable. "You asked me, who do I ask? I just found out too. But the whole city probably knows this news by now. Look for yourself." Charlie picked up a newspaper from the tea table and handed it to him. Joe grabbed it, looked closely, and saw the headline on the front page of the Chicago Daily. Industry heavy news. Southbridge Traders executive suspected of tax evasion. Case filed for investigation. The large, bold font made it clear at a glance. Holy crap. This. Could President Zane have been set up? Joe knew at a glance that this matter wasn't that simple. His first instinct was that someone had come for Frank. Charlie sat on the sofa, his face grim. "I think Frank is in deep trouble this time. Generally, if economic crime opens a case, they have at least 80 or 90% certainty. Otherwise, they wouldn't act so rashly." The tide had turned. Just the day before, they were calling each other brothers. Now he referred to Frank by his full name. Joe's eyes widened, stunned for a long time. Finally, he couldn't help shouting. "Then, what about the advance payment I gave him? Over $30,000. Can I get it back? Damn it. The money I have with him is more than $30,000. It's $110,000. I wired the cooperation funds to him yesterday. Son of a bitch." Charlie was so angry he let out a curse directly. Frank was in, and the crime wasn't minor. Tax evasion plus selling counterfeit goods. The fines alone could bankrupt him, and the huge amount meant he would definitely be squatting inside for a few years. But wouldn't their money with Frank be gone with the wind? This was unacceptable to them. Joe became distressed too, taking out a cigarette and handing him one. How could it be like this? Old Charlie, who on earth is targeting him? The methods are too ruthless. This is aiming for Frank's death. Charlie took the cigarette, narrowed his eyes, thought for a moment, and said in a deep voice, "Besides that kid, who else do you think it could be?" Joe paused, asking in astonishment, "Are you saying that kid Ethan Ford?" "Yes." Joe sucked in a breath of cold air. Thinking carefully, he really felt that this matter couldn't be separated from Ethan. Frank had embarrassed Ethan in front of so many people at the opening ceremony. The conflict between the two was already known to everyone in the industry. This wasn't a normal conflict, but a life-and-death business competition. Holy crap, is Ethan's method that ruthless? Joe asked in disbelief. Charlie took a heavy drag on his cigarette, glanced at him, and countered, "Did you forget about Sterling Tech? You don't know, but I've heard some rumors. Sterling Tech was taken down by Ethan and Frank joining forces. If that's really the case, I think that kid Ethan is probably even more terrifying than we expected. So young yet so ruthless. If Frank's Southbridge Traders goes bankrupt because of this, then the entire source channel in Chicago, maybe even the state, might be controlled by West Ford Group. It will all fall into his hands." Hearing this, Joe was dumbfounded with shock. Stunned for a long time, he quickly sat down and asked, Then what do we do? Do we have to cooperate with Ethan in the future?" Charlie also thought of this and felt a massive headache. Before, he had supported Frank under everyone's gaze. If he needed to cooperate with Ethan in the future, wouldn't that be very slapping to his own face? This was going to be difficult. It's too early to say these things. We have to find some connections to understand Frank's situation inside. If he can't get out, we have to get our money back. This is the most urgent thing right now. Charlie knocked on the table solemnly. All right. Get our own money back first. No, we also have to fight for breach of contract compensation. Even if there are fines, we are creditors of Southbridge Traders. Joe gritted his teeth. Makes sense. With creditor rights, we could divide the assets. I'll ask legal to prepare later, and we'll go together. Charlie nodded in approval. By the way, also, try to contact Ethan's side to repair the relationship. Send someone to give some gifts first. Joe sighed. Okay, I'll do that. Chicago, Star City Enterprises, General Manager's office. Julian York looked at the newspaper, his face cloudy. Suddenly, he threw the newspaper on the table and pressed the electric bell. A moment later, a young male secretary in a suit walked in. Mr. York, what are your orders? The young secretary bowed and asked. Go, organize our business with Southbridge traders. Cut off all business dealings. All of them. The secretary paused and confirmed again. Yes, all. Julian looked grim. Okay, I'll notify the business department later. The secretary nodded. Julian rubbed his chin and thought for a moment. By the way, contact President Ford at West Ford Group for me later. Say that I was busy with work during the last opening ceremony and couldn't go. Now you represent me to send a congratulatory message. I will call Ethan personally later. Also, prepare a gift suitable for an opening ceremony. Jade carvings, Buddha amulets, whatever works. Buy one and send it over. Julian felt uneasy and added, remember, get something high-end. Bring it to me to see after you buy it. Go buy it later. Okay, Mr. York, I'll go do it first. The secretary was stunned, not knowing why Julian cared so much about West Ford Group, but he didn't dare ask, only obeying orders. After the secretary left, Julian knocked on the table and muttered, Ethan's methods are ruthless enough. That noon, inside the president's office of West Ford Group, Ethan sat at the coffee table, leisurely drinking coffee, with today's newspaper placed on the table. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking. Come in. Tank pushed open the door, his face full of smiles. Brother Ethan, old Ross is back. Ross Lawton walked into the office, came to Ethan, bowed slightly, and smiled. President, everything is done. Ethan stood up and laughed. Ross, come sit down and talk. With your professional level, how many years do you think Frank will get? Ross sat down and laughed. Based on the amount of tax evasion in the evidence, plus the number of counterfeit products sold, it belongs to a huge amount. Barring accidents, 5 years to start. 5 years? Old Ross, you really are something. Tank exclaimed excitedly, sitting down too. Ethan poured coffee for both of them and continued asking, what about the fines? How much will Southbridge traders be fined? Ross took a sip of coffee and replied, the preliminary estimate is over $4 million. But it's not ruled out that the police might find more evidence, possibly even higher. This amount is enough to bankrupt Southbridge traders. A smile finally appeared on Ethan's face. Indeed within expectations. Tank gave a thumbs up to Ethan and praised, Brother Ethan, this move is truly awesome. Removing the firewood from under the cauldron. When you asked me to give gifts to Lana Cole before, did you guess you would provide us with so much evidence? Brother Ethan, you're really too awesome. Ethan chuckled lightly. Giving gifts was just to maintain the relationship. You could say Frank truly dug his own grave. You'd best remember, it's better to offend a villain than a woman. Lana and I were just helping each other, or to be direct, using each other because we both had a common goal. She got so much internal information and information on Frank's crimes just because she wanted to use my hand to take down Frank. And we happened to hit it off, simple as that. Ross praised. It seems the president is the formidable one. Otherwise, taking down Frank through normal legal channels would have been troublesome. By the way, President, they have people in court. Should I go take them out? Malfeasance, bribery, should be at least 3 years. Ethan, cough, old Ross about that. No need to move on him for now. Frank is our target. And regarding the person inside, I just need to get a little evidence, and then we can go strive for something. Ross was a smart man. He understood immediately. He smiled. Oh, I understand. The president makes sense. Seizing the opponent's handle and then co-opting them. Why couldn't they be used for oneself? He figured this out instantly. Ethan turned to Tank and instructed, Tank, remember to send some coffee beans to Chief Editor Sue of the Chicago Daily later, and say we'll definitely treat him to dinner another day to express our thanks. Tank laughed, nodding. Okay, no problem. I'll go later. Suddenly, Ross's mobile phone rang. He picked it up to check, then answered. Hello, this is Ross Lawton. Is that so? I know. I'll go over later. Ross hung up the phone, a strange look on his face, a little surprised. Ethan asked, what happened? News from the police. Ross touched his chin and replied, it's police news, but the police said Frank Zane has been bailed out. Ethan frowned. What? Bailed out? Evening, Pan Ocean Estates. A black Mercedes drove into the community and stopped in front of a luxurious townhouse. The door opened, and Frank Zane stepped out of the car. At this moment, his face was haggard, his eyes bloodshot. Having spent a night in a holding cell and facing high-intensity interrogation, his psychological defenses were nearing their limit. If he didn't get out, he would have completely collapsed. He wasn't afraid of going to jail, but he was afraid that once he went to jail, he would lose everything. President Zane, let's go. The boss is waiting for you upstairs. A middle-aged driver extended his hand and said indifferently, his tone devoid of any respect. Frank responded, dragging his exhausted body upstairs. As soon as he reached the door, he saw it was open, lights on inside. Walking in, he saw 7 or 8 burly men in suits standing in a room. On the living room sofa sat a white-haired old man. The old man wore a Tang suit, leaning on a golden Namu cane, his face stern, his bearing imposing. Sitting next to the old man were Frank's wife and son. His wife, Wendy Zane, hugged their son tightly, staring coldly at him. "Dad, I'm back." Frank lowered his head, shuffling over. He didn't dare look his father-in-law in the eye, like a child who had made a mistake. Thump! The old man slammed his cane on the floor, the sound particularly piercing in the quiet room. This sound was also like a thunderclap hitting Frank's chest, making his legs instinctively tremble. "You still have the face to see me." The old man turned to stare at him, angry but dignified, exerting immense pressure. "Dad, I know I was wrong." Frank lowered his head, replying weakly, Walter Haynes, haven't begged anyone much in my life. Yesterday, for your sake, I personally went to the police station and sold this old face of mine. Frank Zane, you really have a future." Walter Haynes leaned on his cane and stood up, limping over to Frank. Dad, I'm sorry." Frank hurriedly apologized. Suddenly, smack, Walter raised his hand and slapped him fiercely. Frank staggered from the slap, his legs went soft, and he knelt on the ground, his cheeks swollen and red. "Idiot!" Walter raised his cane and lashed it fiercely onto Frank's body. This stick knocked Frank flat on the ground instantly. He grimaced in pain, but dared not cry out. Walter continued to whip him with the cane. After just a few hits, Frank finally couldn't stand the pain and rolled on the ground holding his head, wailing. The others in the room just watched helplessly. No one dared to come over to stop or persuade him. Everyone knew the old man was in a rage, and no one could stop him. Seeing his father beaten by his grandfather, the child was scared and started crying loudly. After a dozen lashes, Walter was tired too. Just as he paused to catch his breath to continue hitting, when he finally couldn't help but come up and hold his hand. "Dad, your grandson is watching." Wendy grabbed her father's hand and pleaded earnestly. Walter looked back at his grandson, crying fiercely, and his raised hand finally lowered slowly. "Frank, if it weren't for Wendy, I'd beat you to death. You've really grown capable, running a company right into the police station." Wendy brought a chair for the old man to sit down and soothed. "Dad, calm down. Don't ruin your health with anger." Frank climbed up from the ground, bruised and swollen, continuing to kneel. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Dad, I know I was wrong, but this time I was set up, and I'm sure it's Westford Group's Ethan Ford doing this to me. Dad, I'm wrongly accused." Walter pointed at his nose and cursed, "Bastard, you still have the face to claim you're wronged? Do you think the people in economic crime are vegetarians? If they weren't sure enough, would they bring you in for investigation? And you're still crying injustice to me? I think you're not wronged at all. I'll tell you clearly. This time I can only fight for bail pending trial for you. If the evidence from economic crime is conclusive, you honestly go in and squat for 2 or 3 years." Frank turned pale with fright upon hearing this. What? Squat for 2 or 3 years? He thought his father-in-law had used his power to settle this case for him. He didn't expect it was just bail, and he still had to go to prison. Thinking of that dark prison, Frank crawled to Walter's feet, hugged his legs, and begged, Dad, this time you must help me. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want the company to go bankrupt." Walter kicked him away and scolded, "Idiot, do you think I'm the judge? Can I sentence however I want? You're definitely sitting in this prison. However, for Wendy and my grandson, I can only try my best to fight for a reduced sentence for you. Maybe you won't need 3 years. Behave well inside, and you'll be out in a year or 2. Let this be a lesson for you." Frank was stunned. He asked urgently, Then what about my company? Dad, what about my company?" Walter glared at him. "You're going inside. Can you still manage that broken company of yours?" No. "Dad, Southbridge Traders is my life's blood. My life's blood." Frank's eyes were red as he shouted hysterically. Southbridge Traders was the company he founded single-handedly. He had poured all his effort into it. He wasn't reconciled to letting the company collapse just like that. Not reconciled. Frank continued to beg, "Dad, it doesn't matter if I go to jail, but please save my company." "How can I save it? The fines are estimated to be at least $4 or $5 million. Do you still expect me to subsidize you? Subsidies millions." Walter stared at him angrily. "I tell you, it's impossible. Your company can't be saved." These words smashed onto Frank's heart like thunder. Southbridge Traders couldn't be saved? He suddenly stood up from the ground, looking up to the sky and howling in grief and indignation in a frenzied state, like a crazy, trapped beast. His eyes were bloodshot, staring dead at Walter. I'm not reconciled. I'm not reconciled. Do you know how much price I paid for the company? How much effort I poured in? In your eyes, it's a broken company, but in my heart, it's my everything. My everything. Do you understand?